Welcome to the Magnus, Dukeness, Wookness, Agnes, Listen Along Archives with Johnny Uruwani and Jiggles. This is the correct canonical name. I know you think it's called the Magnus Archives of Jonathan Sims and Martin K. Blackwood, but it's not. If you look past, the veil, it's the Adventures of Johnny Uruwani and Jiggles. You can trust me. You can trust me. I edited season 5. Just trust me in this. It's the secrets they didn't want you to find out. I'm giving you all the secrets now. Gonna listen to lots of episodes. Very excited about this.
Quill presents the Magnus Archives.
Ooh, heck, it's happening. Here back home, it's happening.
Episodes 200. The Biscuit Factory.
Lads.
This is Johnny Uruwani, head Uru at the Magnus Institute. This is my story, my Everest, my biscuit.
Johnny Uruwani? I don't know if I can hold on. It's been so long since I tasted it. That crumbly goodness, that short texture. I'm beginning to forget.
Jiggles, just a little further. I got you. Soon we'll be dunking our hearts out. Our love has got us this far. Just a bit It can't be.
For good cows. Hope. It's hope. Look, the panopticon. Good cows are back. It's moo all the way down. They're surrounded it.
Jonah, he's been defeated. The fears have lost. No one can defeat the good cows. But how did they get in? The good cow domain was thought to be lost. Martin? You were muting all along? Then that means you know the way to the biscuit factory. They're all here. Hobnobs, custard creams, chocolate bourbons, digestives. I can't believe it. Yes, I won't eat your jammy dodgers, Mutin. My only concern is how we're going to catch them all before they drop on floor. There's 8 conveyor belts, and the baskets are almost full. If only we knew someone with 8 hands. Mr. Spider? He's here. He was good all along. We're saved, Mutin. He's single-handedly catching all the biscuits and gift-wrapping them for us. The world's saved. If only he survived. You know who I mean.
But lads, I'm here. I finally finished kayaking. Oh Lord.
Timmy Wimmy, you survived. This is a miracle. Life truly makes sense again.
Oh, come on lads. Let's go get a cuppa and wait for this all to blow over. Wink.
This is Johnny Uruwani, head Uru at the Magnus Institute. This was indeed the archives of our Magnus. But listener, what will your Magnus be? What will your archives be? Go and make something spectacular. You gave me everything, and I only want the same for you. You deserve the world. Thank you. Statement ends. The Magnus Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill. It is licensed under a Creative Commons non-attribution share-alike 4.0 international license. Today's episode was written and performed by Neeks and directed by Neeks. It starred Neeks as Johnny Uruwani, Jiggles, and Timmy Wimmy.
It never gets old. Hey everyone, welcome to a Sunday session. Let me put on some chill music so we're not completely blindsided. Welcome everyone. For those who are wondering what the frick I just made you listen to, that is the true canonical Magnus 200 Archives episode. You know? What else was I meant to do? Oh heck! Dr. Sinha, thank you so much for the 1,000 bits.
I can't handle you.
Oh. Bear me, I just gotta say something to the thing. So, for those who are wondering what that was, I finished the Magnus Archives proper ending with about 2 weeks to spare before my next job in Rusty Quill. Just finished the episode, wondering what to do with myself, and it's like, well, 200 isn't going to come out for a while. I've got all these skills I've learned over the past year going to waste. I might as well use them. I know how to edit the Magnus Archives. I know how to add the effects. I can roughly bias my way through soundscaping enough just to make that cinematic masterpiece of a podcast episode. If we're truly being honest with ourselves. And I was like, well, I might as well make my own. I hesitate to use the word fanfic and kind of call it the true canonical ending that Johnny was too scared to write. And I made it. I wrote the script, I edited it, I recorded it myself. I redid the intro. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? Hello everyone. For those who are new, or for tuning first time wondering, who the heck am I? I'm Nico. I am the Wednesday session Archie streamer, and I am the Magnus Archives Season 5 vocal cut editor. Saying this now, from this point onwards, there's going to be spoilers for the entire show. So if you don't want to know anything about 200 or anything, this is your 5-second, 10-second warning to kind of mute it, because the whole stream's just going to be spoilers galore, because I've wanted to chat about this for such a long time. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I'm the Magnus Archives vocal cut editor. I am also the kiss editor of episode 200. I am very, very happy about that kiss. It gives me so much joy to see everyone reacting to Magnus 200, and then the thing that kind of sticks out is that kiss moment. I'm very proud of it. I'm very, very, very proud of it. It's already been said in the Q&A, but to kind of give you more of a background on that kiss, with that scene, which I'm sure everyone knows the scene now. Hey Martin! Johnny and Alex knew just how important that scene was. Basically the last arc, and especially from 197 onwards, every single scene was really, really, really important. So episode 199, huge important, but 200, it's the last scene with John and Martin in. They were throwing everything at it. Absolutely everything. We went through every single take, every single position. Johnny and Alex were trying every single angle, different ways of acting, just everything. And generally speaking, the kind of rule we have in the Magnus Archives is that we don't do audible kisses. We generally do that the fandom's latched onto, which is fabric noises. So whenever there's a kiss, or whenever there's a hug, or whenever there's like a romantic moment, Elizabeth, the soundscape editor, the incredible Elizabeth, puts in fabric noises so you can kind of tell what's going on. Alex made a kiss in one take, and I think it was about 2 hours worth of footage. I don't think even he expected it to stay in. He kind of did the kiss at that moment as a kind of like a marker, because I only had the audio, but I imagine he was acting out the scene as he was doing the things. It's like the kiss, and then the stabby stab, and then the stabby stab, and then the world, you know. I don't think he expects it to listen in. But I took it, cleaned out most of the noises, kept like the peck in, and it worked. It very much worked. I didn't think anyone would keep it in, because it goes from me to Elizabeth, who's the soundscape editor, then goes through a masterer, then goes to Alex. So there's 3 times where people would have could have kicked it out, and they didn't. And it worked amazingly. I'm so happy they kept it in. So happy. The noises, the noises, you know? Alex may or may not have made that noise. I'm neither confirming nor denying. But yeah, it's one of my proudest moments. I'm going to be showing some episodes of my proudest moments. Today will be a mix. We've got 3 hours basically, and it's already 8:15. Wow, I've been talking for a while. 3 hours basically to go through some fan favorite episodes, and they'll include a couple of episodes from season 5 as well, to kind of tell you the kind of behind the scenes bits as to what I figured out as I was editing the show. Also, hi people in the Archie Streams Discord. If you're watching the stream but you don't have a Twitch account, if you go into the Archie Streams channel on Archie Official, I can see your chat there. To which Kiari's there, and Sophie and Gav. But yeah, I came into the Magnus Archives pretty late. I started in season 5. So I started from 166 was the first episode that got released that I edited. And then I did quite a few. I kept a kill list of the characters I managed to edit the deaths of, which I'm quite happy about, quite proud of. But I'll chat it more through. But yeah, I was gonna start with the very first episode, but Mikey LeBones LeMikeson did that in the last one, so I may just jump straight to the second one, which should be on my list. 21 Freefall. We're not doing Stream Raiders today. I don't know how to turn off the Nightbot commands, but there's no Stream Raiders today. But yeah, I'm going to go straight into the episode and kind of chat with it. 21 Freefall is Enjoy Sky Blue, which has, I think it's Simon Fairchild. Here's a thing. Here's a disclaimer. Because I joined season 5, I don't know. I've not listened to every single episode of the Magnus Archives. I got to season 5, started editing it, and tried to figure out what the heck is going on. And basically, I had to listen to the cliff notes of the past 160 odd episodes. So yeah, so there's certain episodes that I've not listened to because they weren't plot relevant at the time, which meant, unfortunately, that's just back ends. Don't look at back ends. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. Ignore back end. You didn't see any of that. It's secrets. So unfortunately, because Vast is the coolest one, but not necessarily the most plot-specific, plot-relevant one, I haven't listened to many Vast episodes. But yeah, I'm really excited. Secrets? Secrets? There's no secrets. There's no secrets here. There's no secrets. But yeah, there's content warnings. If a mod, please could press #CW for... I mean, it's Magnus Archives. You can kind of assume what's coming up. But with episode 21... being the Vast, this has got a lot of vertigo in it. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to start playing. And yeah, also treat this as an AMA. If you want to ask me anything as the vocal editor, please feel free. Again, I can't give you too much stuff, but since Magnus has ended now, there's a lot more stuff I can talk about. So yeah. And away we go. Here's the alternative intro to the Magnus Archives. I kind of prefer mine, but you know. This is Enjoy Sky Blue.
Rusty Quill presents
Rusty
the
Quill.
Magnus Archives.
You can already hear...
Episode 21. Freefall.
You can actually hear Johnny's voice being younger and much more... He's still trying to figure out the voice. Which is why I really like the earlier seasons. It's when they used to just sort of hammer in everything. I do have a list of episodes I'm going to go through. I've kind of picked episodes that I know are fan favourites. And I've also picked a few episodes which are quite interesting production-wise.
Statement of Moira Kelly regarding the disappearance of her son Robert. Original statement given October 20th, 2002. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims,
Baby
head
archivist.
archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. You must forgive me if it takes a while to get this all down on paper.
There's
I'm
little
not
bits
fast
that are the
writing,
same.
but what I saw is... It's all very well to say, write down what you saw, but what if you don't have the words? What I saw doesn't
But there's
make
definitely
any sense.
things where he's not
My
figured
head
out
hurt awfully,
exactly
I
what
tried
it's to
to
do.
remember it well enough to
John in season
describe.
1's much more arrogant, I feel.
Oh, I'm mad? What happened is mad. It can't have happened, but it did. It took my Robert, and now I can't even think of how to put it down in a
Thank
way
you,
that
are you here?
explains it. Maybe somewhere in your library are the words that explain what happened, what I saw, but I haven't read your books. And knowing wouldn't bring him back. I suppose I'll just have to try. My son, Robert, was always an adventurous boy. Even when he was a child, he'd be running off and getting into scrapes every chance
Hey,
he
Otto.
got. We were living out in the country back then, Althorpe, a little village in Lincolnshire.
Because this goes to the original idea of the Magnus Archives, is that Alex chose it. Alex and Johnny chose it because they believed it was easy to do it this format. I can't remember the exact wording, but they were basically saying, if you just have one person speaking for the majority of it, reading a statement, it's theoretically easier.
I used to have to drive him half an hour every Wednesday because that was the closest.
Is the episode
legendary
quiet?
to
I can
the
turn up the
bottom
episode.
wall, and he was obsessed with reaching the top. After he went away to university, he'd come home every holiday with some new dangerous sport he'd taken up: wakeboarding, mountain biking. He almost missed his father's funeral because he was away on a
Episode's quiet,
scuba
can turn it
diving
up.
trip to Cyprus, and only just managed to book a last-minute flight home. It wasn't his fault, of course. Stephen's death came as a shock to us all. What I mean to say is, I wasn't at all surprised when he told me a few years ago that he'd gotten very involved in
that better?
skydiving.
Cool. The earlier
Started
episodes
as a
aren't
charity
as
thing.
loud.
Last year at Yarmouth, he decided to do a skydive for a charity he'd been volunteering with. I went along to support him when he did it, and when he touched down, I could see it in his eyes, even before he'd removed his parachute, that he was in love. Since then, it was rare that a month went by without him throwing himself out of a plane, to the point where I wondered where he was getting the money, as from what I hear, it's not a cheap hobby, and he certainly wasn't getting much from me. Shortly after Robert graduated, he came to visit. He was the happiest I'd seen him since his father passed away, and when I asked him about it, he said he'd got a job with a company that ran skydiving all over the country. They were called Open Skydiving, and his face was beaming when he said this. He was now a fully qualified skydiving instructor. I was happy for him, of course, even though every time he described jumping, it sounded quite dreadful
really
to me.
hits differently when you know how
I had
this
always made it clear that he
show
was
ends,
never going to get me up there.
but more specifically
plummeting
when you
through the
know
sky.
about the fears and the entities.
After that, I didn't see him much.
Because at this point,
He was
it's
home
very
for Christmas
much,
and Mother's Day, if I was lucky.
is
But
this
aside
just
from
guys
that, it was the
mucking
occasional
about? Is
phone
this just a
call
guy
or
pretending
even a
about
postcard if he
paranormal
was
stuff, or
running
did
a
this
dive
actually
somewhere
happen?
far away.
And because John is
I had
that
a
in
small
that
stack of them
arrogant,
back home.
newly
Well,
head
I already have to
archivist
remember him
role.
by. I remember he
Works
sent me
so
one
well.
from Aberystwyth,
Works
of
so
all
well.
places not too far back. And he signed it, "With love from your free-falling son." I used to really like that, but now the phrase just makes me shudder. He was happy, though. He was doing what he loved. I tried to hold on to that. There was no way for me to know that anything was wrong. I mean, nothing was wrong, I'm sure of it. Not until that last time.
This episode specifically, when you know how Sky
came to see me 3 months
Grandpa
ago.
ends up in Magnus 200.
I was surprised, as June is the height of the season, and his last phone call had seemed to say that he was expecting to be busy right up until winter arrived. Still, here he was, standing on the doorstep, and he looked to be in an awful state. He had deep bags under his eyes, and it didn't look as though he'd washed in some time.
At the rat party.
Before he'd said anything, I took him
And he
inside,
was
sat him
so
down, and started to
annoyed
run a hot bath.
That Sky
Whatever
Grandpa
had
managed
happened,
to
I told
survive
him
the
I'd
whole
wait until
thing,
he'd gotten himself
all the way
together.
up until like the last paragraph
I
of the
think I had
Magnus
the right.
Archives, where he found out
Once
that
he
he
had cleaned
dies.
himself up and had
He
some
was
hot
so
food,
annoyed.
he seemed a lot more himself.
Because
than
it's
he
like,
had
well, he manages
Still,
to
he spent a good
escape in
10 minutes just sat there,
175.
staring into space.
John doesn't kill him. He just lets him fly
I
away.
asked him what the matter was, whether he'd had an accident or lost his job or something. When I said that, he laughed, an odd sort of laugh, and said that he had lost his job. He'd quit, he said. I asked him why. After all, he had always loved the whole business of skydiving, but as I said the word sky, I saw him flinch back, like I had slapped him. So I quieted down and asked him to tell me what had happened. They'd been running a dive up near Doncaster, he said. Some 85-year-old doing a tandem jump for charity in memory of his wife. He hadn't been the one actually doing the jump with the old man. It was a significant enough thing that his colleague had asked him to come up as well for support.
I know how much everyone loves
He'd been
Simon.
coming down alone on a solo parachute.
Simon has the cane, right?
It all started by then.
That's Sky Grandpa, right?
Flight up was fine, and the old man, who said his
believe it
name was
is.
Simon, appeared to be having a great time, making jokes and, quite frankly, a lot more eager to
Just
throw himself
vibing
out
and
of a
doing a
plane
lesson
than
when
almost
putting every
anyone Robert
episode
had
in
ever met before.
playlists. Oh, wow.
Finally, the climb finished.
Oh, that's amazing. You've got to put all the entities in different
the rush of
playlists.
air. Harriet Fairchild, the instructor, readied herself to jump with
Thank you,
Simon
Verissima.
strapped to her chest. It was at this moment, Robert said, that the old man turned to him, shouting something. He didn't hear it clearly, but thought it had been, "Enjoy sky blue." He had felt dizzy all of a sudden, almost falling to the floor as Harriet hurled herself and her passenger out of the plane. It passed in a moment, though, and he pushed himself out of the door and was greeted by that familiar plunging feeling in his stomach as he began his free fall. He knew something was wrong almost immediately. He was jumping, he said, from about 10,000 feet, so should have been falling for almost 30 seconds before opening his parachute. But he was having trouble keeping count. The clear blue sky was so bright it seemed to blind him, and the numbers were all jumbled in his head. His balance seemed to be all turned around, and he said he had had to shut his eyes tight against the brightness, concentrating to keep his count. Finally, he reached what he thought was 30 seconds, and went to pull his ripcord. But as he did, he said, he opened his eyes again and froze. The ground was gone.
That's so cool.
I asked him what he meant. Had he got turned around, maybe? He just shook his head.
This
and
is
told
the
me
original
again
music
the
as well.
ground had gone. All that there was, he said, was that vast, empty blue sky stretching off before him. But still he was falling into it.
Because,
It was bright, he kept saying. It was so bright. Although there was no sun in that sky, and no clouds for it to hide behind. Just the empty blue sky in all directions as he fell into it.
pause there. A thing to notice, production-wise, is this is before, like the first few seasons, it was basically Alex and...
He asked what
Thank
I
you,
loved,
Annie, for the maid.
what I wanted to do in the furniture. I wanted to do
In the future.
Oh,
Future, not furniture.
Every time I think Mike and Anna have just gate crashed my room. A thing to notice about the earlier seasons, because we didn't have a dedicated soundscape editor back then, it was literally Alex and Mike editing everything, producing everything. The soundscaping is more selective. So instead of hearing a fully formed everything in a room, it's more like you hear the wind rushing in this episode, or if you're in Elias's office, you hear the clock ticking. But it's very, 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 very minimal. in a way to make the voice, Jonathan, for most part, being the most prominent part. And it's quite interesting to see how it starts off that way, and then it goes into what it becomes. It's like a fully formed soundscape. I like hearing the change.
He wanted to pull the ripcord to unfurl his parachute, but his hand wouldn't close over the grip. So he just fell. Robert was shaking badly at this point, so I got him a blanket and made him another cup of tea. I wasn't sure I believed all what he was saying, but he'd certainly been through something dreadful, I could see that. I asked him how long he'd been falling like that, and he said he didn't know. His watch had stopped, but it had felt like hours, days even. He had been so hungry, he said, but had just kept falling. He didn't know which direction. There was just that empty sky all around, so it was impossible to tell. Finally, he said, he saw the ground again. It didn't feel like a change or a sudden difference. He just closed his eyes as he had so often in that place. And when he opened them, it was there, green and sprawling and rushing up towards him. He'd been so relieved he'd almost forgotten to deploy his parachute. He did, though, and landed safely near the target area. He was greeted by Harriet, who was surprised by how long it had taken him to get down. She told him it was almost 15 minutes after when he should have hit the ground, and Simon, this old man, and his supporters had already left. It was obvious something was wrong, and Harriet asked Robert if he was all right. He repeated 15 minutes, just 15, and she told him yes. What had been the problem?
That's a long time to fall.
Robert
15
quit
minutes.
right there and then, and it was shortly after that he came to see me. Now, obviously, I was a bit speechless at my son's tale. It's hard to say how much of it I thought to be true. I didn't think he would ever have lied to me about something like this, but at the same time, the sort of thing he described, well...
Yeah, it was longer fun because it never
I didn't think
ended.
it sounded like something from a healthy mind. Let's just say I was thinking the sort of thing you'll be thinking in a few minutes. Point is, I tried to talk him through his problems and his feelings, but the more he talked about it, the more agitated he became, until at last I decided that we weren't getting anywhere, and I got his old room ready for him.
It's the
He slept
best
soundly
episodes
that
and
night
it's
as far
the
as I
buried
remember.
episodes that have the best
The next morning was a
soundscaping
beautiful
rhythm.
day.
Like
The sun was streaming through the window. and the air was
132, the
warm
buried
and still,
episode where John
without it
goes
being as
into
hot
the
as it'd been
coffin
the week
to
before.
rescue Daisy.
When Robert finally woke up, I suggested that we go
That
for a short
one,
walk to enjoy the day.
that one gets to me
and
so
hopefully
much.
clear out any of that fear he felt that was still hovering about. He didn't seem to want to go at first. He kept glancing at the cloudless sky. But I promised him a picnic lunch, and that seemed to convince him. That last hour was one of the happiest I'd ever spent with my son. In the sunlight, the bags under his eyes seemed to disappear, and after a few minutes he even stopped glancing at the sky all the time. We walked along, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, and the world seemed to be all right. There's a hill near where I live.
Yeah, that
It's a
episode's
gentle,
got to me
grassy
too.
slope that
John
goes up
Westman
quite
Daisy
high.
ruined me as an episode.
You can see it from the kitchen window of my house. That's one of the reasons I'm moving. It was that hill we were climbing when it happened. We had just reached the top, and Robert turned to me with a sudden look of utter terror on his face. I asked him what was wrong. He just screamed and pushed me away. I fell hard onto the ground and could do nothing but watch as my son ran off up the hill. And then... This is the part I can't put into words. I'm going to try, but whatever you think of when you read this is not going to be what happened. It will just be the closest I can describe before thinking about it too much gives me a migraine. Closest I can say is this. The sky ate him. He didn't fall or fly or take off. There wasn't anything in the sky that took him. It wasn't a hand that reached out and grabbed him. It was the sky itself, the whole sky, as far as the horizon I could see, that twisted around and moved like the shifting of sand. It ate Robert. It's the only way I can describe it. Please don't make me do so again. Statement ends. Before I address the central point of this statement, namely the question of whether the sky can eat people, there are a few other facts that need to be addressed. Firstly, the company that Miss Kelly states Robert worked for, Open Skydiving, does not exist, and as far as Sasha's research can determine, never has. It appears in no company register.
But yeah, so I was talking about the change in soundscaping.
That deal with the immense number of licenses
I do find they had to change. The music is much more prominent in the earlier seasons because there wasn't that much soundscaping. So you know when it hits. You know
sometimes the open
when the entities are coming along because the music does a huge big
they
part
were
of that.
Officially licensed.
Whereas the later episodes,
so either they were lying to Robert
the music
Kelly,
takes a backseat,
or he was lying to his
and
mother.
to be honest, you don't even notice the music in the backseat because it's there to set the tone, as opposed to be the most prominent part. Because the most prominent part in later seasons is much more.
But Tim really outdid himself here.
And when you've got such elegant soundscaping come through, like especially like the hospital episodes in season 5, where there's so much detail in it.
On the 3rd of June,
we had to make the music
Joseph
take a backseat.
Reported hearing an impact in the field adjoining his house. Upon investigation, he found a parachute had hit the ground at high speed, partially burying itself in the earth. There was no sign of any body or anyone who might have been wearing it, nor did it have any logo or label, and in Tim's follow-up interview, Mr. Puce vehemently denied there being any planes or skydiving taking place anywhere near his property. The parachute was unopened.
Tim never died. Tim went kayaking.
According to police reports, Ms. Kelly attempted to report Robert missing on 7th of June, but it proved difficult due to an absence of any information on friends or residences. In fact, for the 4 years prior, it's hard to find any evidence for Robert Kelly's existence at all. It may just be that he moved around a lot, but it feels like more than that. Ms. Kelly declined our request for a follow-up interview, saying she had no desire to revisit the incident. One other thing bothers me. If Miss Kelly's recollections are correct regarding how Robert described his last skydive, Harriet Fairchild, the instructor, and an old man named Simon. It might just be a coincidence, but I recall the name Simon Fairchild was one of the ones used by... My God, Martin, what the hell what are these things?
What were the things? Is that the worms? Martin, are they the
The
worms?
Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by rustyquill.com and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License. Today's episode was written and performed by Jonathan Sims. It was produced by Alexander J. Newell, Mike LeBeau, and Murray Porter.
Alexander
and
J.
directed
Newell.
by Alexander J. Newell. To comment on
Alexander J. Newell! Oh, that's at me. I saw a comment I wanted to read just then. Where did it go? The distinct different tones of John through the seasons, just as he carries the voice, and the progression from the skeptic arrogance in season 1 to the tremendous guilt and tenderness towards Martin in season 5 is just incredible. Yeah. This season 1 John, he's very arrogant. It's almost like he's not there for friends. He's not there for needing anyone. He just wants to read the statements and gets his job done and go home. But of course, we all know by now he was marked by the web and then marked by the beholding and marked by them all, really. But like it fits so well. And to go from... I mean, it depends which way your journey is going from, because I know a lot of people's journey into the Magnus Archives either come from Tumblr, where there's lots and lots and lots and lots of art of John and Martin kissing, and it's like, oh, that looks really cute. Maybe I'll listen to the Magnus Archives, and they have to go through 4 seasons of the moogly woogly scariness before they get to the Johnny Uruwani and Jiggles getting together moments. It's me where... Well, I came a different way. Most people may have came from the start. May have just saw that Magnus Archives was trending in the horror podcast section and went from there. I myself came from season 5 doing some of the fluff episodes, as in the extra bonus content fluff episodes that people wrote, going from that to trying to edit season 5 to realizing, oh my god, I need to know what's going on. So I frantically tried to listen to as much as the early seasons as I could, and then I got given like the cliff notes of the episodes to catch up. And then I realized after a while, because like my first realization is I thought John and Martin were like wholly good. I thought John was like the good guy, Martin, you know, being the boyfriend, the sidekick in my mind in the first, because I listened to 167 was the first episode I edited. 166 was the first episode that came out. To me, they just seem so good because, you know, they're going through, they're defeating all these avatars, they're trying to make it to the Panopticon, the world's gone to Hellscape Land, and they're just trying to plod along and do it all. I was like, oh yeah, these are the good guys, these are the good guys. And then I started listening on to the earlier seasons, and in my head it was like, oh, right, John's a bit of a douche to everyone. And then I realized, oh wait, everyone's just a bit of a douche to everyone. These are just real people. They're not like holy heroes, not holy villains. They're just people. I'm gonna do that whilst I get the next scene up. And yeah, going through that, listening to the earlier seasons for the first time when you know what happens in season 5 is quite the...
I found Magus because of a Tumblr discussion about how the main character and author had the same name. I started listening because I was wondering what that was about. Now here I am.
That's really cool. I know. Thank you, Osai, here for the 200 corgis. I'm going to call them corgis because it sounds cooler. I was right to mute it because I just got ads. But yeah. And like, I know a lot of people... It's the thing about long-form shows, because this is 200 episodes. It's a lot of episodes. And when you're doing that many, you either can stay the same, to which it would have been start of the episode statement for about 17, 18 minutes, then like a 2-minute segment at the end. That again and again and again. And Johnny could have quite easily have done that. Johnny and Alex could have quite easily have just made it like a Monster of the Week thing. Quite easily. And I still think it would have been really, really, really successful. They just carried it on ad nauseum. So say it never ended. They just had season after season after season after season. I think it still would have carried on. But to have the guts to go, no, we're going to turn this into a podcast that ends. I mean, how many podcasts end? How many podcasts have a written ends? It's insane. And to go from scary moogly woogly to like, I love Martin. Where's my Martin? Martin, give me my Martin. I need my Martin. I don't want to go on without my Martin. Magnifique. Magnifique. And it's why, to me, 199 is the most important episode of the Magnus Archives. Episode 200 is where everything happens. I understand that. I understand it's where Elias gets killed. Oh god, that scene was so much fun to edit. There was so much fun to edit. John and Martin do the Sherlock deaths, and you know, the world, the fears get let loose, and the world is, you know, saved-ish. It's ruined, but you know, they managed to stop the entities hitting them. But to me, 199, in hearing everyone what all the main characters thought was the right thing to do, and especially that scene, which I've not been able to listen to until... I've not listened back yet because it was really hard to edit. The scene between John and Martin, and John just laying out all this guilt he's had and telling them just exactly how it feels. Oof. Oh, that scene was hard. That scene was really hard to edit. But like the whole of 199 is just start to finish. We've got to do this. No, we're going to do this. No, we're going to vote, and it's going to be this. It's going to be this. It's going to be this. Eva Rose Games. The vocalizers Elias' statement is my favorite thing in the whole world. Absolute genius. Oh, thank you so much. 193. I'll do this before we go to the next episode. We're going to listen to episode 81, A Guest from Mr. Spider, in about 2 minutes. Also, Sophie went to my comfort crew. This is Mark. This is my comfort crew. Mark is they, them. I love Mark. Mark, you can... I'm just going to hold you. What was I saying? Yeah, 193. Elias kind of hits 192, but 193 is like the first proper Elias is back. And oh boy, you could physically hear the excitement in Ben Meredith's voice that he got to be Elias. And I've been waiting so long to edit Elias, and I knew it was coming. And because there's 2 vocal cut editors, there's myself and then there's Annie. I love Annie. Annie's amazing. You need to know more about Annie. I was wondering who would get which episode, and then it dropped that I was getting 193, and oh my god, I was so excited. And yeah, it was like Ben had almost like rehearsed his lines so much, because when it got to the recording stage, yeah, we do a lot of takes to make sure we have the take. But honestly, his first take was like spot on. Like, I didn't really need to touch the other ones. I did little bits here and there. But yeah, especially towards the end where Elias is talking to John, but John's like OG Elias, and is like, so why did you heed the call? I can't do Ben. And he's like, good, the job is yours. I loved that line so much. There was so much tension between them. It was so good. And then episode 200, where it's the death scene, and then Elias snaps out of it, and you guys got to hear Elias's voice as Elias rather than possessed. Because I was doing a vocal cut, I just heard Elias the whole way through before we added all the sound effects and stuff to make it sound possessed. But that was the first time you guys got to hear Elias as Elias in season 5, and that's sort of waking up out of it. He's basically just going, do what you must, I have won. He's basically just had like cake after cake after cake of like all this beholding, and he doesn't care what John does. He says he doesn't want to die, but to be honest, at that point, Elias has won. Elias has gotten everything he wanted out of it. I just love it. I was so happy about it. I was so happy I got to have... I got to edit those episodes. I was very lucky. Let me just pop that back on. And we're going to go into episode 81. I chose this one because we now realise the actual importance of A Guest from Mr. Spider isn't just John being marked by the web at the start. This is literally the first start of just the web's entire plan. We've just... Jack Strickland, thank you for coming. Jay Strickland, sorry. We just listened to episode 2134, and now we're going to listen to A Guest from Mr. Spider. Because, you know, A Guest from Mr. Spider, we're going to listen to A Guest from Mr. Spider. I'm just going to whack on subtitles, and then I'll try not to speak over a lot of this episode, because I know how important it is for everyone. And let's go!
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives. Episode 81. A Guest for Mr. Spider.
Statement of Jonathan Sims.
Yeah.
Former head archivist at the Magnus Institute.
Oh yeah, because he gets booted out.
Regarding a childhood encounter with a book formerly possessed by Jürgen Leitner. Statement recorded by subject, February 18th, 2017. Statement begins. I have been thinking a lot over the last couple of days about how this began. For me, that is. I cannot help but feel that, hand in hand with the death of Jürgen Leitner, came the death of the lens through which I viewed the world. Even in the depths of my paranoia, something I now attribute to the presence of
This is
that
when he
the
was
being
hiding.
was
This is when he
posing
got
as
kicked
Sasha,
out and everyone thought he was, yeah.
like a grain of sand behind my eye,
Oh
rubbing
god,
and
yeah,
irritating,
the
but
Sasha.
with no clear cause. Even then, I knew how the world worked. There were supernatural things in the world, but they were rare, isolated and exaggerated, vastly outnumbered by wild tales and drunken imaginings.
The not
one
them
name
thing
I
scares
held in
me
my
so
mind
much.
as a true source of evil was Jürgen Leitner, and I knew him as the worst of it, for it was his name that had marked the encounter that scarred my youth. And of course, in my heart, I knew that no one else could have possibly seen anything as horrible as I had. Well, maybe I could have named one person, but I watched him disappear forever. But now I know what Jürgen Leitner truly was.
Jürgen Leitner.
A spoiled child, playing with forces he barely understood, calling himself a jailer to things he couldn't even conceptualize. There is so much more horror in this world than I had ever dreamt possible, and my suffering, I now know, pales in comparison to what has befallen others far more innocent than I. But perhaps not for long. These beings that lurk beyond us know my name, and if I understand Leitner correctly,
This is
one
the
of them has
shift.
already claimed
To me, this is when the Magnus Archives
The
shifts
eye.
more towards what they want.
Appropriate, I suppose.
Like season 4 and season
I do
5
not know how
maybe.
many of them there are, or
To
precisely
me, you
how
could probably
they
cut the
separate,
Magnus
but I
Archives
do
in
know
two.
that the
Season
eye
1 and season 2, and then
beholding
season
was
3
not the
onwards.
first that I encountered in my life. The first was the spider, the web, and I have no idea what that might mean. I was 8 years old when my grandmother gave me the book. No one ever believes me when I tell them my age. I don't know if it's the already greying hair or something in my demeanour, but they always act surprised when I mention being a child in the 90s. I will admit the last few years
Oh
have
yeah, this one
aged
really...
me considerably.
This
Regardless,
episode,
it
this
must
one
have
bugged
been a
people
year or
because they
two
always
since
picture
the
the
library
archivist
was
being in the
destroyed,
40s
though I
and
had no
50s.
inkling of it at the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
My parents had passed away when I was too young to really remember them. My father of an accidental fall when I was 2, and my mother a couple of years later from complications during routine surgery. My extended family weren't close and I had no siblings, so I ended up living with my grandmother. A kind enough woman, but she had already raised her children, and the resentment she felt at having to raise another was never something she completely managed to hide from me. It seemed to mingle with her grief, so the sadness over her own lost son would manifest in recriminations and bitterness. Saying this aloud, I worry I'm painting too bleak a picture of my grandmother. She cared for me as well as she was able, and whatever her private feelings might have been, she did try her best. And I was hardly an easy child to deal with. While I may not have shared the inclinations of my peers towards active mischief, I was precocious and impatient, quick to talk back, and
John, what's wrong? You've
even
hardly
quicker
touched
to
your
wander
Sonic
off
the Hedgehog
whenever I
curry
got
J
bored.
Stricklands.
By the time I was 8, the police had to return me from my explorations at least 3 times, and my grandmother swore that if it happened again she would begin locking me inside the house, and I fully believed her. She did discover that the one thing that could keep me rooted to the spot were books. Television pacified me for a half hour or so, but a book would keep me in place until I had finished it. And for all the veracity of my reading, I was never actually that fast, lingering on pages that caught my imagination. So in this, she saw a solution. The difficulty was I was also very picky, and looking back on it, there was little rhyme or reason to what I did or did not care to read. I never tried to really define it, but I think the closest I could come to putting it into words was that I hated to read anything I felt like I had read before. This made it something of a nightmare to keep me entertained, as any author with a distinctive enough style would only ever afford me a single book's worth of reading before I tired of them. I can still hear my grandmother's voice trying to hide that irritation bubbling up. "But you like Diana Wynne Jones." In the end, she came up with a solution that now seems like a stroke of genius, although at the time I found it strange and bothersome.
Do we ever learn
The local library was some
Martin's
distance away,
actual
so between
age?
visits my grandmother would go to all the
Because I
local
guess
charity and
canonically it's
second-hand
probably the same age as
bookshops
Alex.
and buy up every book they had that was
But
50
I always
pence or
pictured
less.
Martin being
Then she
about
would
7 or
present
8
me the
years
pile
younger
and I
than
would
Johnny.
look through it until I found something I
29.
liked,
Oh, okay.
or at least tolerated.
I always pictured
And
him
then I would
around
read that.
24.
After I was completely done with the pile, she would donate it to one of the other charity shops. It wasn't
Yeah,
something that could be
29
kept
sounds
up
out.
forever, but it worked for longer than you'd think. It was shortly after she had started with this system that I found my first lightener. One of the things that annoyed me most about my grandmother's approach was that she never seemed to exercise any sort of judgment at all about how appropriate something might be for me. I didn't mind this so much when it let me read a slightly too gruesome thriller, but she would also often present me with stacks full of bright, square cardboard books of the sort you'd read aloud to a preschooler. This bothered me far more than any dull technical manual or dog-eared dictionary, as I couldn't help but feel it was making a comment about my intelligence. I mean, obviously that was absurd. I watched my grandmother grabbing the books without even glancing at their covers, just checking the price and stacking them. But somehow it still felt like an insult that she might in some way think I was at a level to be reading The Elephant and the Balloon or whatever nonsense it was. So, when searching through the latest trove of books I felt my hand grip another square, thin volume, I almost discarded it without even looking.
Carrie, I always picture Martin 1 or 2
But
years
I did
older than
look.
John.
And what I saw immediately struck me
I can
as
see
odd.
that.
Instead of the garish colours that I expected, the cover was monochrome. Matte white with scratchy black webs covering its corners. And in the middle of the cover, half written, half carved in a childlike hand, was the title, A Guest for Mr. Spider. On the back cover there was no blurb, just a crudely sketched image of what I assumed to be the eponymous Mr. Spider. He stood upright on his spindly black legs, attached to a disproportionately swollen abdomen. The rest of his legs were splayed at odd angles as though in the middle of some sort of dance, and his head had no mouth, but was covered
I do
asymmetrically
feel
with
quite cool
8
about
eyes of all
I
shapes and
listened, I live
sizes.
vlogs listening to this
On the
episode
top of it there sat a small bowler
before I
hat,
knew how
which had
Magnus
been
was gonna
drawn a
end.
splash of red ink,
And I was listening to this, it's like,
unlike the black and white which
wouldn't
made
it
up
be
the rest
very,
of the
very
image.
web
I was
to
a
pretend
bit taken
that it's
aback.
not actually in charge when it
I had seen
actually
plenty
is?
of children's books that tried to be
It's
a little
very
bit
web
scary
to
or
let the beholden
ended up being
think the
unintentionally
beholden's
disturbing, but
in
this felt
charge when
different.
really the web's in charge.
There
I'm
was
so
something
proud I
to
got
this
that bit
drawing
right.
to this book
It's the only thing
that
I
I'd
got
never
right.
seen before.
I was very proud of it.
A violence seemed to ooze from it, sticky and pungent. I had no idea what was inside, but I knew that I hated that book. And I knew that wasn't going to stop me opening it. You know what was immediately inside the cover. If you're in a position to be listening to this, you know exactly whose mark was there. The book itself starts with a blank room in a simple house, almost entirely bare save for a small table with a pot of flowers on it and 2 doors. The flowers are drooping in a way that might just be a poor rendering of bluebells, but with the black and white it just makes them look sick. In the center of the room stands the figure I take to be Mr. Spider. His arms are still splayed wildly, and his back is turned to the reader. He is staring, it seems, at the door on the left. On the next page the image is identical, save that the arms are now in different places. The third and the fourth are the same again. There is no text on any of them. Then, on page 5, the words, "Knock, knock," appear next to the door, in the same style as the words of the title. Mr. Spider's arms are suddenly straight and still by his side. The text comes again. "Who is it, Mr. Spider?" The door opens, and stood there is a thin, scrawny-looking fly clutching a box. It is crudely dressed in an ill-fitting suit. It is hard to tell from the fly's face, but his attitude seems to be one of trepidation or anxiety. "It's Mr. Bluebottle," the text reads.
Mr. Bluebottle.
"And he's brought you a cake." The next page is a close-up rendering of a large slice of cake in a box. It does have colour, but it's a pale green that makes me think of disease. Then comes a page showing the insectoid face of Mr. Bluebottle, the worry now stark, etched there. Then there is a page with no picture at all.
Travelling bad. I
Just the
feel like
words.
Lightning was okay in his initial intention. He
Mr.
just wanted to
Spider
mark his books
doesn't
as
like
dangerous, so
it.
he doesn't actually read them.
Then the book returns to the room.
My take
Both
of it
doors
is
are once again closed. The only difference between this
he
image and the
never
one on the very first page is the ink
intended
that seems
other
to have
people
been
to read them. I
spilled on
think
the lower
in my
half
mind
of the
he was just
right-hand
marking
door.
his books for his own
There are
personal
several more
use.
pages of
He
Mr.
didn't
Spider
care,
waiting. His
in
arms
my
a
mind,
windmill of activity.
whether other
Then
people were going to
another
get hold of them.
knock,
He
knock.
was just marking, that's
the
got the
left
thing I
door.
want, that's got the thing I want, that's
And
got the thing I
Mr.
want.
Spider goes rigid. Who is it,
At the
Mr.
start,
Spider?
but then he turned into, you know.
In that position, it's clear his belly is even larger than it was before. The door opens on another fly, this one slightly larger, wearing a pale yellow dress. It's Mrs. Fruit, the book announces. And she's brought you some flowers.
Mrs. Fruit?
The flowers on the next page look even less healthy than the ones on the table and are coloured with a gentle pink. A close-up on her face, frozen in stark fear. Mr. Spider doesn't eat flowers, the next page announces. And Mrs. Fruit is gone, the door closed again. The right-hand door is more noticeably stained now. The once black ink now seems like a dark, crusty brown at the hinges and the seams. The flowers brought by the doomed fruit fly now stand on the table, but they are more clearly wilted and stained a deep, vivid red. Mr. Spider's abdomen is engorged and straining, and where his mouth would be is marked by the same dried brown as the door. His arms are moving once again. On the messier page, with more colour to contrast it, I can see that his hands aren't empty, but are weaving and pulling on thin grey threads that stretch all around the room and out through the cracks in both doors. Knock, knock. Who is it, Mr. Spider?
To me,
Behind the door stands a large, burly fly, this one dressed in
this
baggy
John
overalls.
doing
Next
the
to it
statements
stands a much
sounds like the
smaller
season
fly,
5 John doing the statements.
dressed
To me, this
in
from
what
season 3
appears to be a
onwards
child's
is when the
version of
archivist
those
really
same
becomes the archivist.
overalls.
Like John's
They are
really
both
nailed down what he
openly
wants the
weeping.
archivist to sound like and what he wants him to be.
It's Mr. Horse, and he's brought you his son. The close-up on that fly's
That's
face
good. I
is
mean,
an
well, that's
image
early.
that
Mr.
still
Spider
comes
was
to
good
me
all
when
along.
I'm having trouble sleeping. Then the text,
Oh, am I speaking too quietly?
Mr.
I
Spider
can wait.
once more. When we go back to the picture of the empty parlour, it's smeared all over with dark reds and browns. Mr. Spider's abdomen now dwarfs the rest of him and seeps a sticky red along with the now clearly visible grey thread. He has turned to face the reader, staring into me as his arms move and move and move. The second to last page shows the right-hand door up close, the stains and the ink seeping from the edges. It looks like it has a cutaway panel that can be opened onto the final page. Mr. Spider wants another guest for dinner, it reads. It is polite to knock. I feel my hand closing into a fist and reaching for the door, preparing to rap my knuckles on the grimy old wood. It was at that moment that a hand far bigger than my own slapped the book from my grip, before shoving me hard in the chest and sending me sprawling onto the floor. I was in the park, a few roads away from my house. Had I taken the book
Just
there
to
to read, or
what
did
I was
somehow
basically
wander
saying,
there
because
while
people couldn't hear
engrossed
me,
in it? To this
season
day,
3 onwards, from this episode onwards,
but
is
I was in
when
the park and standing over me.
John sounds like the John I was editing.
You know,
Like, this is,
I-
to me,
I can't
John doing
understand.
these statements exactly the way how John does the statements in
Daniel.
season 5.
I almost
And I
want to
feel
say
like
Michael,
this,
but
from
that
season
isn't
3
it.
onwards, I feel is when John, as in
saved
Johnny,
my life and I
the
can't
man,
remember his name.
meat space
Why does your memory do
actor,
that to so
writer,
many important
knew exactly what he was going to do. So I always adore this
people
episode
deserve to
quite a
be
lot for that.
He was a bully, 18 or 19, I think. He helped my grandmother with odd jobs sometimes, just a bit of cash-in-hand work, but he had always taken a dislike to me. At the time I had convinced myself that it was because of how smart I was, since he was, to put it charitably, not very clever, but I have since come to the conclusion that I was a deeply annoying child. Still, he was more than twice my age, so I'm certainly not excusing his decision to torment me whenever he got the chance. Name-calling, the odd beating, sometimes stealing from me, all very standard. He just made the extremely poor choice to do it at that exact moment. My tormentor bent down and picked up what he had slapped out of my hands and examined the book. I was too dazed to protest, and he started to mock little Einstein for reading a kiddie book. But as he did so, he flicked through it, and as his eyes passed over more and more of the page, the words tailed off, and he seemed to be reading it himself. His hands shook ever so slightly as he slowly made his way through it, and his legs began to move. It was jerky and unsteady, and he didn't seem to notice that he was doing it. I had no idea what was going on, not really, but I was somehow desperate to get that book back. He was much bigger than me, though, so all I could do was follow as he walked down alleys and side streets. There were fewer and fewer people about, and I realized with a start that I had failed to notice night falling. At the far end of a quiet residential road, he walked up to one of the houses. I never found it again, and for all I knew it might have actually been his house. He was still reading. When he reached the entrance, he held up the book and placed it on the front door. I saw that cutaway panel of Mr. Spider's stained and bloody right-hand door, and he knocked on it twice. I saw the words clearly in my mind almost more than I heard the sound. Knock, knock. The door opened, and inside was dark. Against that darkness I could see the thin grey strands wrapped around the limbs of my former bully. And then, from inside, stretched two impossibly long limbs, bony and covered in coarse black hair. For a second there was almost the start of a scream, but the legs wrapped around him too quickly, and he disappeared into the doorway and out of sight. It slammed behind him, and he was gone, taking the book with him. Statement ends. You can see, I hope, why this engendered in me
It's a very important episode to know the backlore of John,
some deep feelings,
and also knowing about that he gets marked by the web. To me, this hits one of the nails of what the Magnus Archives is trying to portray, well, does portray, in that people are people. Because there's a lot, before this episode, you don't really know John's backstory, and he does quite a lot of arrogant things, as does a lot of the cast, in fact, all the cast. To me, you realise that people aren't wholly good or wholly bad. There's a reason why they act the way they do, and why some of their actions can be perceived as one way when it could mean another way. And to me, it's always been about context. It's very, very, very easy to say, well, all the avatars are bad. Or like, all the entities did this, and the entities made them do this. And it's also like trying to figure out what the entity did and what is just them. To me, this episode is really important in showing they're just people. They're just people who found themselves in it. And some of them were too far away to notice it, and other people kind of realised as it was happening. But yeah, that's why I really adore this episode.
It hasn't gone well. Whatever is going on, this unknowing that not Sasha was talking about, Elias killing Gertrude and maybe Leitner as well. I need help. I need allies. I just wish this revelation didn't come just as everyone is convinced I'm a deranged killer. Oh, hello?
Everything okay, John?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just recording some thoughts. I didn't know when you were going to be home.
Sure. Did you clean the kitchen?
A bit. I mean, I can't exactly pay you anything. I thought...
It's fine. To be honest, it's nice to have someone keep the Admiral company while I'm out.
He literally
the
just sleeps on the
Admiral.
radiator. I've got a lot of time to kill.
You looking for a new job yet?
It's complicated. There's a lot of stuff hanging over from the last one I've got to take care of.
Well, like I said, you're welcome here as long as you need.
I suppose you are rolling in all that sock money.
Ugh.
Up to your eyeballs in
Sock
mattresses.
Don't. They did send me one, you know. Oh, it was dreadful. I couldn't sleep on it. I managed 3 days before my back gave out. I've still got it somewhere in the guest room if the other one's not up to your exacting standards.
I think I'm all right. I was going to make a cup of tea if you want one.
Maybe later. I've got recording of my own to do.
Right, you are. I'll keep quiet.
I wouldn't worry too much. The studio's pretty well soundproofed.
What's this one about?
I'm trying to find some new angle on the ancient Ram Inn.
Well, there'd already been a What the Ghost on that.
No, you're thinking of every other hacky ghost podcast. But, you know, if it sells a few t-shirts.
Oh, yes, I meant to say, actually, thank you for...
It's fine. Though I don't know what sort of employment dispute leaves you without a change of clothes.
You wouldn't believe me.
Do you even listen to my podcast? I'll believe anything, but on air.
I will tell you, Georgie. I just...
It's alright. There's no rush. I mean, it was clearly pretty bad, so only when you're ready. If you're ready.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyway, I got recording to be doing. Catch you after.
Yeah.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast.
Georgie's always sounded like Georgie as well.
Licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution.
Because I mean, Georgie has always been very confident in themselves. And they already have that relationship with John, and they basically try to stay away from as much as the entities as they could. Georgie's always just sounded like Georgie to me. Alexander Jamie. But yeah, this episode is so important for so many different reasons. I mean, I get people really adore the Anglerfish, episode 1, because, you know, that's when everything started. And then I like how the Anglerfish gets tied into the ritual at the end of season 3. But Guest for Mr. Spider, for me, takes the biscuit as like the real opening to showing you what the Magnus Archives is about to become. I mean, I'm biased because I come from season 5 knowing all the information that came with season 5 and then listening back. Whereas at that point before then, Johnny and Alex were still, you know, figuring out exactly what they wanted to do. Hydrate. Thank you for the hydrate. But I will say, the thing that terrified me the most, like the absolute thing that terrified me the most, is the Not Them. And the episode where John is listening back to the tapes and he's hearing like Sasha and not Sasha, like the hello, I can see you. Oh. It's so terrifying. Just the thought of someone you know just being completely replaced and you not knowing any of it, noticing any of it. Oh, so good. It's so good. But yeah, the Stranger, I've always got an affinity with the Stranger. The Stranger and the Spiral, I quite like a lot. The Vast is really cool, but I'm quite aligned to the Spiral. And then the Stranger just has, to me, it has the most coolest avatars attached to it. But yeah. What is Oh, I've got 2 adverts. What is everyone's favourite episode? Oh, 186. Oh, I could talk for days about 186. Because I'm quite biased. I quite like the episode Lost John's Cave. Lost John's Cave. Everyone talks about this one, and it's quite scary. Yeah, that's a really good one. I really like 132. Or 160 is really good. And 193. And 170. Oh, God, yeah, 170. With Martin and the Lonely. Oh, yeah. I can see that one. A lot. Yeah, Nico, you asked that now. I've instantly forgotten every Magnus Archives episode. I forgot about this in season 3. I forgot that John gets booted out at the end of season 2 and he's just kind of on the outskirts trying to get back in. Completely forgot about that. Because he just gets completely like sidewhacked by everyone. Wonderland House 177. I'll talk a bit about 177 soon. That was a heavy episode. 177 with Dr. David. Oof. That was a hard one to edit. Like a really, really hard one to edit. For more ways than one. Because it was the first episode I'd edited where the recordings were all done in pandemic. So from a technical point of view, it was very, very hard. But also, everyone was going from recording in Rusty Towers, where they can get into the zone of this is recording time now, to suddenly Johnny's recording in his own house and just setting up his own recording bit in his house. And Johnny mastered it, but like the first few episodes is Johnny doing, because it's just Johnny doing the statements by himself. Him figuring out how to do it by himself when he's just recording into a microphone by himself. 177 came out just after hiatus. There was some episodes before that were recorded pandemic-wise. It's just 177 is the first one I edited that was in pandemic. And yeah, it just... 177 was all my fears. Everything about 177 which hit me the hardest. And I was editing it like last August when everyone was in lockdown. America was in protesting. And I really came face to face with like, is this a show that I can do? Because the episodes before then, I did 167, I did 166. I did 171, which is the Jared Hopworth one in the Bone Garden. 177 is when I realised, because it came out after the hiatus, by that point I'd listened to all the other seasons. I knew exactly what was going on. And I also knew up to about halfway through the 180s what was going to happen. And I knew how important these episodes were. And it went from like, I get to work on a really cool episode, a really cool podcast by Rusty Crowe, to realising this show means so much to so many people that I can't screw it up. And like, it suddenly went from like, this is really important stuff, to being, this is singularly the most important thing in my life right now. And I remember going through 177 and going through the fear and listening to the laugh that Johnny does for Dr. David. And it was hard. We've all had this. Annie had this with 170. And it's very therapeutic, because once you've done your fear episode, then you feel like you can conquer anything. But I was facing that. I was facing the pandemic and the problems with that. And it was the first time where I could feel, I knew the viewing figures and I knew how many people listened to the show. And it was when I started going through the Tumblr tags and the Twitter hashtags. And I realised just how big the show is and just how important the show is. 177 is when I realised, no, I'm just giving it everything. And it was hard, because the production standard of Rusty Crowe is very, 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 very high. And it was like what we call baptism of fire, where you just get chucked in and you swim. And thank you. You guys have been also sweet. Alec, hi Naomi. 170 upset Annie a lot. She was worked up all day after editing it. Yeah. I mean, Annie came into towards the back end of season 4, So, and he's been in the show longer than me by about 10, 15 episodes. It's hard to put into words how you know what you're doing is important, but at the same time, it's going to stay with you. Because I knew it was hard at the time, and it got harder because we all know how the episodes grew out. 177 was one moment when I realised if you can get through this, there is so much waiting for you on the other side. And yeah, I'm very, 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 very happy you did it. Anyway, with this said, we're going to move on to the next one, which I shall reveal now what it is. But, oh no, hang on, I used to do that. Hang on. There we go. We are going to listen to episode 97. And what is an episode 97? Why is episode 97 one of the most important ones? We all ignore the pit. We all ignore the pit. Which means we're going to see a lot of Nicola Orsanov. Oh my god, I adore Nicola Orsanov as a character so much. Nicola Orsanov is a brutal, horrible monster of a person. Don't get me wrong, they did horrible things. But oh, Jessica Law's acting for Nicola Orsanov. It's so good. So we'll listen to this one. Because we have to. We have to. I'm gonna go. We're gonna go. You ready? Are we ready? I'm ready. I'm bringing beats. In fact, I bring viola. Mike probably did, but I wanted to do it too.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Episode 97. We all ignore the pit.
We all ignore the pets. Don't ignore your pets. The most important bits.
Statement of Jackson Ellis regarding the geographical oddities in the town of Bucoda, Washington. Original statement given 3rd March, 2009. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. Last year I moved to the small town of Bucoda, about 15 miles outside of Olympia in the state of Washington. I'd never heard of the town before, and I certainly had no idea about what I would soon start to think of as the pit. The choice to move was not entirely mine, as my circumstances had driven me into a very particular situation. I'd moved out to Olympia from Pittsburgh to pursue what appeared to be a very promising job as a correspondent for a regional newspaper. There weren't a lot of opportunities in my field, so when I was offered the position in Olympia, I had used all of my savings to make the move. I never got the full story on why the paper closed down so quickly. One person told me they'd gone bankrupt due to embezzlement at a high level, another claimed there was a huge libel suit and they'd lost it badly, and a third said the decision had been made by their parent company without warning. Whatever the reason, I turned up to my first day of work to find the office halfway through being disassembled. I hadn't technically started my job yet, so there was no redundancy or severance. I was just stranded in Olympia with no money and no obvious place to go. It didn't help matters that my new landlord proved entirely unsympathetic to my situation, since even if I got a new job immediately, I'd be unable to make the next rent payment on the rather overpriced apartment in the city centre. He told me I was in breach of contract and was to be evicted. He gave me 3 days. So I ended up in a place where I desperately needed to find somewhere very cheap to live very quickly. Somewhere I could stay while I looked for another job. My parents were dirt poor themselves and couldn't help. I mean, I'm sure they'd have taken me back in, but I didn't have the money to travel across half the country, especially not with all my stuff. You never realize how many possessions you have until you find them weighing you down, or how little value most of them have to anyone but you. I sold what I could, but I got less than $50 and had barely got rid of anything. So when I got chatting to Tar, 2 days before I was getting kicked out, and he told me he had a spare room he was looking to rent out on the cheap, I said yes almost before he'd given me any details about it. Thomas Krychek was young, blandly handsome, and not desperately bright. He seemed like a good sort, though. He'd bought a small one-story home in the town of Bukoda with his partner a few years ago, but she'd split a month or two before, and now he was struggling to keep up the payments on the house. It wasn't much, but it fit what might generously be called my budget, and Bukoda was less than an hour's drive from Olympia, so commuting into any job I might actually get wouldn't be too bad. I shook his hand, and I moved there. The town was almost exactly what you would expect. A small grid without traffic signs or markings, patches of grass and dirt with small houses irregularly dotted about. What infrastructure there was boasted only volunteers, and I'd be surprised if there was more than 500 people in total who called it home. The forest pressed in on all sides, like it did everywhere in the Pacific Northwest, I suppose, but it was an effect I was struggling to get used to. As I pulled up to Tommy's house for the first time, it was strange. I felt like even before I turned off the engine I didn't belong there, like I had walked backstage at a theatre. Nobody stopped me, but I couldn't shake the impression that I'd gone somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. Even when Tommy came out and started to unpack the trunk, it seemed to me that he blended into the town in a way I just didn't. There was no sign this was anything other than in my own head, though. Tommy didn't seem to notice anything off, and as I shifted my stuff into the tiny bedroom, he wordlessly handed me a beer with a big smile. I drank it gladly and tried my best to relax. As it turned out, my situation wasn't quite as dreadful as I thought. I discovered the next day that my work had actually paid me a small amount. It wasn't clear whether it was meant to be salary or severance, and I couldn't get through to anyone who might have been able to explain it, but it was enough to ease the relentless pressure, if only a little bit. I allowed myself a few days to rest and recover from the chaos that the last week had been. I suppose technically I could have moved out of Tommy's place, but he seemed genuinely happy to have me around, and I reckoned my efforts were better spent looking for a new job than a place to live. I spent the next few days sleeping, drinking, and gently exploring the tiny town which now counted me among its residents. It was quiet, though by no means deserted. I regularly saw other people walking the streets, though there was no sidewalk to speak of. It may have just been my imagination, but whenever they saw me, it seemed like they paused for just a moment, staring at me before they continued on their way. They seemed friendly enough apart from that, and there never seemed to be any subtext or hidden meaning behind their greetings. Thinking back now, though, I'm not sure I ever saw any children, though maybe I'm reading too much into it. I found the pit almost immediately. It wasn't like it was something that could easily be missed, sitting there at the intersection of River Street and 6th, gaping up at the bright blue sky. It looked like a sinkhole, but almost completely circular. And instead of the sheer drop of most such holes, this one sloped gently down towards a small opening at the center, maybe 10 or 15 feet below street level. In some ways it seemed more like a crater than a sinkhole. But it was so neat and regular, I didn't think it could be the result of an impact or explosion. It was huge, bigger than the street that should have been there, and the thing that struck me as odd was that the road continued around it. It seemed to split apart just before the pit and come together on the other side of it. I mean, I don't know if you can judge the age of a hole just by looking at it, but it didn't seem that old. The road did, though. Or at least it definitely hadn't been put down recently. There was no indication it had been laid separately to the rest of the town. The pit was just there. As I stood, staring at the hole in the ground, I heard a car coming up the road behind me. I stepped to the side as it
Truth be told, I remember how this episode ends. I cannot remember what the statement's about. Is this the pit referring to the actual ritual, or is the pit something else?
It seemed to have barely registered. I left soon afterwards, weirdly unnerved by its smooth, circular presence. I asked Tommy about it the next day. He was reaching to the kitchen to grab me a beer when I told him I'd stumbled across it when walking around town. I wondered, did he know anything about it? How long had it been there? Was it a sinkhole or an earthquake or what? It was only after I'd casually tossed out a whole series of questions that I noticed Tommy had frozen in place, one hand in the fridge and the other on the door. He didn't seem alarmed or scared, just completely still. I was quiet for a few seconds, and then he took the beer out and handed it to me, shutting the little fridge behind him. He gave no indication that he'd heard me, so I asked again. The pit on 6th and River, what was its deal? He looked at me for a while, like he was trying to puzzle out what I had said from a different language, then shrugged and mumbled something about old roads not being properly maintained. No, I said, the pit. The big hole in the ground. He just shook his head like I was talking nonsense and headed off to his room. I tried to drink my beer, but it tasted thick and unpleasant on my tongue. I wanted to forget it, to ignore the dusty crater that waited in the middle of this tiny town. But I couldn't. Something about it rubbed at me, like a speck of dirt in my eye, but the more I tried to reach it, the deeper it went. I checked maps of the area, looking to see if any of them featured the odd landmark, but I found ones that went right up to 2008, and none of them had anything marked at that spot, even though the split in the road had clearly been there far longer than a year. I tried to talk about it, see if anyone else had any idea about what the pit was or why it was there, but when I asked around Joe's, the only diner in town, everyone reacted just like Tommy. Mishearing, misunderstanding, or just straight up ignoring me. It wasn't even like they seemed deliberately evasive. All their reactions seemed genuine, but no one was able to talk about the pit. I'd just about given up on getting anything sensible out of the people at Joe's that afternoon when an older man walked over to me. I'd seen him around a bit, though I couldn't have told you who he was or what he did. He was big, though, with a face that looked chiseled out of limestone. I stopped eating and waited. The old man stared at me for what must have been a good 20 seconds, and then he spoke. "Nothing for you down there," he said. "You just go and enjoy your sky." There was no mistaking the threat in his voice, as if I wasn't going to have a lot of time left to do so, and I was about to say something when his head suddenly snapped forward and he spat at my feet. Then he turned and walked away. I looked down and saw a thick brown lump of mud. Nobody looked over, and I didn't follow him. I actually tried to take his advice. I had other things to be worried about, and fundamentally there was no reason for me to be so obsessed with a hole in the ground. It wasn't even like I needed.
I'm very focused because this is the first time I'm listening to the show, and it doesn't feel like work. I'm not trying to figure out how everything's connected and how to edit that for future episodes. This is the first time I'm listening as a listener, as a fan. It's really nice.
My lungs, I couldn't breathe. There was one, I can't honestly say if it was a dream, but I also can't bring myself to call it a memory. It was sunny, the middle of the day. I could hear the sound of laughter from somewhere in town, soft voices chatting to each other. A peaceful day. I walked as far as the pit, and for the first time I crossed the edge and began to climb down into it. It was dry, dusty, and the air felt different from the rest of the town. Slowly, carefully, I walked to the hole in the center. This bit looked more like a sinkhole, disappearing down into the pitch darkness. It was less than a foot across, and I felt a gentle rush of cool, wet air. I sat there listening, convinced I could hear something. But there was only silence. I leaned closer, my head directly over the hole, and I heard it. And then I did what it told me to. I took my hand, and I reached down into the darkness. Down and down, until my whole arm was inside, up to the shoulder. It was damp and cold, with the rough stone sides scraping my skin. But my hand was stretched as far as I could, and it still gripped nothing but empty air. Then the hole began to close, and all at once the spell was broken. I tried to pull my arm out to get free, but it held me tight, not quite crushing me, but holding me in place. I screamed and cried for help, looking around for anyone who might be able to hear me. But the only people walking by seemed utterly oblivious to what was happening. Then I felt it. something brushing against my hand from below it in the hole. Teeth, wet, blunt teeth, which quickly gave way to a rough, slender tongue that wrapped itself around my hand and snaked up my arm as though tasting me. Then, without warning, I felt it snap back into the darkness, taking some of the skin with it, and my arm was abruptly released. The next thing I remember, I was lying in bed. I want to say I had just woken up, and it was all a dream. But I was fully dressed, dusty, and with long, thin scratches that snaked around my arm. That was when I started desperately looking for a way to leave Bukoda. I'd been there for just over a month by this point and had managed to find a part-time job over in the nearby town of Chehalis. The pay wasn't great, but it should have been just about enough to move out if I was careful. Tommy was upset, of course, but didn't seem surprised. That month had been a bit tense and we weren't particularly well suited to living together anyway. I suppose that's what you get for moving in with strangers you meet in a bar. It was the night before I left that it happened, 17th June 2008. I'd got all my things boxed up and ready to go. I had the keys to my new place. All I had to do was get one more good night's sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, I was woken up about 2 a.m. by the sound of the front door closing. I called out, but Tommy didn't respond. I searched the house to make sure no one had broken in, but the place was empty. I was alone. Tommy's business was his own, I decided, and was about to return to bed when I saw a shadow pass by the window. Then another. I quietly moved to the door and pushed it open, looking out into the street to see if I could figure out what was going on. There aren't a lot of streetlights in Bukoda, and at night, when all the houses are dark, it can get very eerie indeed. I was close enough to see the figures moving down the road, though. They walked casually, like they were just going for a stroll. But there were a lot of them, maybe the whole town, walking out of their houses and trailers and down the unlit streets. I knew exactly where they were going, and I just couldn't stop myself following them. I don't know how the whole town was able to get inside the pit. There must have been hundreds of them, piled high and encrusted with mud. They did not move, though their eyes shone so brightly in my torch that they must have been alive. None of them made a sound, though I could feel a warmth and shuddering below my feet, as though the earth itself was screaming. Without warning, one of their heads snapped towards me. It was a young woman who had lived the next road over and whose name I had never learned. She stared at me, eyes suddenly alive with terror, and began to scream. The instant she did, she disappeared, pulled into the ground, cutting the sound off before it had even begun. I turned and ran, back to the house. I wanted to drive away, but I couldn't bear to be outside, so I hid under my bed the rest of the night, and felt the ground rock gently beneath me. I don't know if Tommy returned the next day. As soon as it was light outside, I leapt into my car and began to drive away. I tried to, at least. I didn't want to see the pit again, I really didn't. But I did. It was empty as before, like the previous night had never happened. But it was bigger, and the road had swelled to encompass it. There was someone else looking at it, though. An elderly woman, face pinched and thoughtful, stood at the edge looking down. I didn't recognize her, or the car she stood next to. She definitely wasn't from Bukoda. Sat in the car next to her, I could see a young man who had clearly been crying. I couldn't get over how blue his eyes were. The old woman caught my eye and looked from me to the pit and back again. I thought about saying something when she gestured for me to leave, and I did. I decided that I was no part of whatever was happening, so I drove away and didn't look back. That night, the earthquake struck that destroyed Bukoda entirely, so I guess I'll never know what was going on. And honestly, I'm glad. Statement ends.
Oh, it's coming.
Why has Elias sent me this statement? It took place the other side of the world, to people who don't seem to have any connection with what's going on.
I've suspected for a while there may be some power concerned with caves and enclosed spaces being buried alive or crushed. So I suppose it's nice to get a statement that goes some way to developing that
She's
theory.
coming.
I cannot figure out what it has to do with our current situation. Is it the nameless old man, the old woman, or whoever was crying in the car? Is he trying to warn me not to ignore my own metaphorical pit? Because if so, what is my metaphorical pit? You know, it's somehow worse now that I know I can ask why he's sending me these statements, but that he still won't tell me. I did my follow-up. Mr. Ellis is still alive and well, currently living in Tacoma and unwilling to discuss these events any further. The town of Bacoda itself is... well, it's gone. Newspapers reported it as an earthquake, and tremors were felt as far away as Castle Rock. But despite every article describing Bacoda as having been destroyed by the earthquake, there are no pictures or records of the destruction itself. No damage seems to have occurred outside of town limits, and all of the roads in the area seem unaffected, despite there being no evidence of rebuilding works taking place after the events. As far as I can tell, there was an earthquake, and then Bacoda wasn't there. But aside from these two details...
It's so good! It's so good!
Georgie, where's your fuse Right. Keep saying it's not meant to trip whenever one bulb goes, but no, John, I don't want to bother the landlord.
You don't want to do that. I mean, you can if you really want to, but you're not going to like it. Sometimes not being able to see something is actually quite a good thing.
Who are you?
Well, my father called me Nicola, and then I killed him. So I thought I rather deserved to have his second name too, which makes me Nicola Orsinov. Pleased to meet you at last.
You killed Gregor Orsinov.
Yep. He got really boring, and I'm a monster. I mean, what do you want me to do? Not pull him apart. I did use all the bits.
You don't sound Russian?
How could I sound anything, silly? I'm plastic. I don't even have a voice box. I had to borrow this one. Don't turn on the light.
Are you going to kill me?
No! I mean, yes, but not for a good long while yet. I don't want you to go to waste.
Then what? Then why are you here?
After you attacked poor Sarah, I thought it was about time we had a good old chat. Face to no face. Eye to... well...
What do you want?
You remember that old piece of skin
bit.
you were talking about? We'd like it back. We thought that mean old Gertrude had destroyed it. But then you went looking, and now we think that maybe she was just very good at hiding.
I'm sorry, are you asking me to find it for you?
That would be lovely, and a lot nicer for you than our other ideas.
What is so important about some ancient bit of taxidermy?
I want to wear it when I dance the world new.
But what?
Question time is over, little archivist. Find the skin for us. You have until... well, until I change my mind. Save your energy for the dance.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's perfect.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill Licensed Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share.
Yeah.
4.0.
Sorry, I've listened to that. I've watched all the TikToks. I love that bit so very, 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 very much. I am so jealous. So jealous that I didn't get to edit Nicola Orsanov. I didn't get to edit Jessica Law. Because that would have just been so cool. I'm so jealous I didn't get to edit Nicola, and I'm so jealous I didn't get to edit Gertrude. Those two are like my favourite characters in the whole of Magnus Archives. But yes, I have listened to that episode a lot, that part of the episode a lot, and I have acted that bit quite a lot to the demise of Mikey Mike. But you know, we kind of had to. I'm going to go for a little bit of a break. A nice little 5-minute break where I have to get a cup of tea. And then when we come back, I'm going to do season 5. And I'm going to switch gears and kind of do much more of an AMA and kind of tell you more about the production side of the Magnus Archives, of season 5, and talk about some of the episodes that I edited. Because oh boy, have I wanted to talk about these episodes for such a long time. But until then, get yourselves a nice cup of tea, and I'll see you in about 5-ish minutes. Welcome back to the Chill Sunday Vibes. Hope everyone's chilled, I hope everyone's lovely. We're going to be going into season 5. Hey Maggie Mog, hey Anne, hey Panty, so I can chat a bit more now because we're not listening to Johnny Wonny being all serious and mysterious and whatnot. So, I'm going to be playing a few episodes of season 5. I've picked ones which are both some of my favourite to do, and are also quite heavy on the plot development. Please use this as a way, if you've ever wanted to know anything, please use it as an AMA. This is probably one of the few times I'll say stuff publicly like this. Obviously there's lots of stuff I can't say because of production secrets and whatnot, but if there's been anything you've wanted to know about production that you've not had in any of the post-content AMAs, oh, thank you. Nice shirt. This is done by our head producer, April Sumner. I was there at the end. Do pigeons have feelings? Pigeons definitely have feelings. I know they look like simple folk, but trust me, if you ask them some philosophical points, they'll give you the answer. But yeah, I thought a very, very, very good one to do. I went for Magnus Green, but the closest I could get to Magnus Green, you know? But yeah, I would say, like I've said before, I came into season 5 from 177 onwards is when I started getting episodes where the pandemic hit, so when we're all editing in our own remote locations. To go through that when you're producing something quite this size is hard for many, many reasons. But at the same time, because we were all in a room, separate to each other, all going through the same thing, and because it was a pandemic, and because the Discord, Rusty Quill official Discord, means I could talk to people as I was editing the shows, I struggle to think of something that will ever happen like it again. Everything kind of hit at the same time that, yes, the world was terrible, but it kind of brought everything closer together as one. And yeah, it's difficult to say just how much the show has meant to me. I mean, it means a lot to all of us, which is why we're here. But if there was ever a single moment of my career changing from this is quite fun to this has completely changed my life in every single way, the Magnus Archives did that. Especially the Magnus Archives Early Access channel on Discord, everything started from there for me. What's the funniest blooper from someone while recording? It's not been released yet, I don't think, but it has been edited. One of the Fluff episodes. Which one was it? It's the one, I think it may actually be Cronut. No, is it? No, it's Ostriches. Ostriches. It's a Patreon only one, so I won't be telling too much about it. But Ostriches contains quite a lot of the cast. which meant there's quite a lot of people in it, which means they all just messed around. That has my best one, because it's just them bantering for a good 10 minutes off and on. One of my favourite bloopers, which has yet to be released, is actually coming from an episode we're about to listen to. And Alex has talked at length about this episode, which is why I adore it so much. So, the first episode we're going to listen to from season 5 is 186. I'm going to stop the chill music because we can't be chilling about. Everyone, stop being chill. It's not chilled out music time. It's now back to spooky time. Get yourselves back into spooky moment time. 186. 186. This is the two Martins. This is Martin's domain. This is Martin talking to other Martin. And oh boy, guess who plays older Martins? It's none other than Alexander. Oh, and Twitch, Joe Strickland 8 asked, how is Alex Jarrett's voice done? Can't tell you that one. I'm afraid I can't tell you exactly how Jared's is done. I will say it's a combination of Alex and effects. And Alex doesn't just speak normally. Alex goes into character for Jared, but I can't tell you why. I can't tell you more than that. So, 186, the whole episode is Alex. Just Alex. Just in a room by himself. Usually, with recordings, you know, you get everyone who's in the same scene. You'd have the producer there, Laurie, and you record it together, and then Alex would direct the actors for the next take and next take and next take until he's happy with what they've done. Alex didn't do that for this one. Alex decided to do this all by himself. Which meant Alex went full on for this. Alex, for 186, gave me hours upon hours upon hours of footage. And he basically just started with, hello, editor. How are you doing, editor? Strap yourself in for this, editor, because this is going to be a ride. And it was. It's the good thing about Ollie and Alex is that Alex records in Rusty Towers. So the recording setup's really, really good. The other side of it is because Alex is basically directing himself, he's just doing it every single way to make sure we got the takes. And oh my God, I've never worked so hard for about, well, it's 27 minutes, so about 27 minutes of audio. I mean, it's about 24 minutes when you take out the intro and outro. But my God. Oh, hey everyone, I'm Mike. Oh, we're about to get an advert from Mike. Well, that's good. That explains a lot. This is one of my favourite episodes. I mean, because it's very heavy in the Martin lore. But to me, this is the moment when Martin stopped being like John's accomplice and started becoming equal footing with John, at least in a relationship sense. And yeah, lonely isn't my fear, but I heavily relate to Martin because Martin's always been my favourite character to edit. Because Martin's so unique. So unique. And yeah, with this one I got to add all the little bits with Mike. This stream's gone on for another hour, Electric Chica. With what's very unique to Martin is what he says in between lines is very, very important. Because John's so assured and so monotoned, he's very sure of his words. Martin stutters a lot, and Martin has all these little noises. And really, really important. So when you're editing Martin, you're not just picking the cleanest take, which is what you would do with all the other actors. You're basically finding the most Martin-esque bits, and you add in all the little stutters and the clicks and the clacks, and it just makes his character so alive. If you edited Martin when he's so clean, it doesn't sound like Martin. It doesn't sound right. You have to add all the flubs and all the stutters and whatnot. I mean, I take out all the I take out the mouth sounds, so you're not hearing like mouth sound clicks and whatnot. But the stutters I keep in. Neeks, do I decide which takes to use? It's a joint effort across the board because it goes through so many hands. But as it's my job as a vocal cut editor to pick the best of what's been given to me. This goes for any vocal cut editor across any show. It's not specific to Rusty Quill. But there's quite a lot. At the start, I was being trained up, so not so much in the earlier episodes, but as things progressed and went on and went further on, I got much better at honing in which were the best takes. And it's not so much... When you're editing audio, you're not just picking one full take. Because Alex has talked about this in the Q&As. You're kind of Frankensteining takes. So you may take the first line from one take and the second line from another take. You may take half a sentence in one sentence, half a sentence in one take, can combine it that way. If you're really extreme, then you're taking half a word from one take and splicing it into the other take. It's a lot. And just, I don't think... It's one of those things you don't notice it until someone tells you about it, just how much work goes into it. And it's like the soundscaping. When it's done well, you don't notice it because you're immersed into it. But when something's wrong, that's when you start noticing something's not quite right. Yeah. But we're going to go into 186. And we're going to get started. This is one of my proudest moments of editing I've ever done. One of my proudest moments. There's quite a few from the last arc which I really enjoyed, but 186 sticks out for me. How long was the raw audio? Hours and hours and hours. I can't give an exact figure, but this was a lot for one person. And I can't wait for the bloopers to get released to this, because Alex starts losing the will to live about halfway through. At one point he pretends to be a robot. Just wait, it's in the bloopers. Just you wait.
Voice of Tim Stoker from the Magnus Archives and head of video for Rusty Quill. And I'm here today to tell you about the new audio drama podcast from the creators of SCP Archives, Lake Clarity, and The Fall of the House of Sunshine, called Margaret's Garden. Okay. Margaret's Garden is a new thrilling story set. Visit margaretspodcast.com to find out more information.
Thanks, Mike. You did amazing, Mike. Thank you.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives.
Fun little tidbit. By the way, I don't know when bloopers get released.
Episode 100.
Just to point that out now, I have no idea when bloopers get released. We have them, and we don't know when they get released. So it could be forever away. I don't know when they are. So just putting that to bed. Don't get too excited. When you're editing something like the Magnus Archives,
quiet.
I generally pick music which is very happy. So especially when I do the statements, I'll listen to John do a really heavy statement, and then I'll go for a break and get a cup of tea and basically listen to Taylor Swift or Carly Rae Jepsen or Smash Mouth. It's kind of nice just to get the whiplash from it. Can we get the Biscuit Factory cut, the whole Magnus Archives with the theme quiz, lads. Boom button, I'll try my best. But yeah, I like doing that.
So this is it then. How dreary.
Also, knowing how 200 ends and then coming back to this episode, you're going to get a hell of a lot of whiplash. So I hope you're ready for it.
Hello? Anybody? John? Hello? Big surprise? Well, at least I can still remember everything this time. And no more of those bloody chairs. It's weird though.
I've never actually been anywhere like this.
That's because it's your domain.
I said, it is kind of... Huh. Wuthering Heights. Yeah! God, I hated studying that. It was all just so... overblown. Yeah! But that cover, those wide, empty spaces, it felt right, didn't it? So what? That's where we are? Right down to the monochrome. Do you have an umbrella? No. But you don't want one. We like the rain. True. Because it makes the sadness feel at home.
Like a luxury.
Turns it from a burden into an indulgence.
Oh, an indulgence.
That's right.
This one was really hard to edit because Alex is doing both characters. So you do one take, you'd do one Martin, really happy with the take. Then you do the other Martin, and then you realise they're not bouncing off each other, right? So then you'd have to go back through all the takes and figure out one which plays off really well. It's really, really hard, but Alex does it so goddamn well. The difference between Martin and other Martin, you can just hear it so differently. I mean, we're panning it slightly, but yeah. But because Alex is playing both, you can't record it at the same time. So it was really, really tricky piecing it all together to make it work. There was a lot of notes. There was lots of notes in the audio editing
what
file.
Is this? You're part of me, so you know everything about me, is that it? Yes. Because you're part of my domain. Also, yes. Some sort of cosmic joke about being alone with my thoughts, I assume? I'm here because you're trying very hard not to be alone, to resist the comfort. So instead I get to talk to myself. Apparently. Okay, so if I'm so desperate not to be alone, why isn't John here? He can find me anywhere. I don't know. Oh, yeah. Look, I know what you know. Maybe I'm just a bit more open about it.
Just if you want to hear it through my ears as well, listen to these lines, but listen to every single noise that isn't a word. So every time Martin breathes out, or every time Alex breathes out, or every time he stutters or mumbles, it's so important to Martin's character, and if you don't add them in, you're missing out so much of Martin's persona. So if you want to hear it from that editing point of view, I'd recommend it.
And what do you mean by that? Like how you don't actually want him here? Maybe that has something to do with it? You've no idea what you're talking about. I mean, you can argue with me if you like. Seems like a bit of a waste, though. It's all right. It's hard to be vulnerable. No, it's not that. No, I'm ashamed to let him see this place, alright? To see what feeds me? Sure, that's part of it, but it's not the whole thing, is it? Not really. What do you mean? Well, if you don't count Memory Manor, when was the last time you were even on your own? Well, It has been a very long time since the Institute. That's a good point. It's okay to want a bit of space now and then. New romance is hard, and Armageddon makes it even harder.
Well, thank you,
Never mind the fact that you're metaphorically joined at the hip thanks to the whole I-Lord thing. It's okay to want some space. Oh, I see. See what? I get it. So that's your deal. You tell me what I want to hear to try and get me to stay. Seriously? Fine. If you don't want to engage, if you want to pretend I'm just some temptation ghost, yeah, you go ahead.
Temptation ghost. I love that line.
I'm not your enemy. Oh, really? I thought you said you were me. Right, yes, very clever. We have our moments, I guess. Look, if you want to leave, you can. It's not a problem. You won't try to stop me? I mean, it really doesn't matter to me. You leave and I'm just you again. It's all the same to me, really. So why do you want me to stay then? Because you want to stay. Because you want to have a real rest. To just breathe and be quietly sad, I guess. It's not healthy. Maybe not. But I'm not entirely sure what healthy options are even left at this point. We could talk to John about it. We could. But we both know that loved ones make the worst therapists. They're too wrapped up in trying to stop you hurting to actually help. But hey, we know all about that, am I right? There's nothing wrong with comforting people. A cup of tea isn't a resolution.
I'm just going to pause that. I was speaking to Johnny about this episode way after it aired. I'm basically saying, thank you so much for giving me an episode where I had to edit Alex and nothing but Alex. And Johnny just giggled to himself. He was just like, yeah, I wrote this and I knew it was going to be absolutely torture for both the editor and Alex. But, you know, I don't care. It was a really good episode. Which I thought was really funny. The thing that made me laugh, though, I was chatting to Alex about this. And Alex gets really annoyed because all the statements that John does, that Johnny records for John, are like really spooky, really scary. John gets to be all these characters who do like horrific things and whatnot. And then every time Martin does a statement, he just has to pretend he's all scared and it's all so dreary and gloomy because it's so lonely. And I just feel like Alex does these episodes and then goes to Rusty Quill Gaming and kind of takes it out on Rusty Quill Gaming that he can't be mean and menacing in the Magnus Archives. Yeah, I thought I'd share that.
At best, it's a plaster. At worst, a muzzle. Yeah. Even so, I could murder a copper. I bet you've got a kettle out here, though. As a matter of fact, I do have a thermos. You're joking.
You're joking.
This is our domain. You're not supposed to suffer here. Well, not like the others. You know what I mean.
Oh, tea sounds. Where would you be without tea?
Here. Wait, is that? Yeah. Sorry about that. There's only so much we can do, what with the new world and everything. Even the good things get tinged with memory. Oh, oolong. Oh, of course. Whenever I asked a question she didn't like, or she wanted to stop the conversation, off you'd go to put the kettle on. And it always had to be that bloody oolong. Ugh.
That bloody oolong clip, that take, Alex nailed from take one. He did lots of takes of it, but his first take was perfect for it.
Yeah. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. That's just the guilt talking. Oh, you think? She was awful. She wasn't well. Both things can be true. She was still my mum. Oh, our mum. Whatever. And we're glad she's dead. Jesus. Too much? Like I said, I'm a bit more open. I don't lie. You don't need to. Not here. It's just us. If we're glad, why do I feel so guilty? Because you feel guilty about everything. That's not your mother. Stress is a proper factor in everything that's happened to John. I brought Jane.
Hi everyone.
Sorry. Crap, where were we? Balls, where were we? Does anyone know? Oh.
She wasn't well. Both things can be true.
I think we're here.
She was still my mum. Oh, our mum.
Sorry, I meant to pause it and did that. I'm so sorry. This bit of the episode is really, really perfect. Is really, really hard. Because this is when the other Martin keep cross-cutting each other. when you're trying to cross-cut people, sorry about the mic jump scare. When you're trying to cross-cut people, it's hard anyway to do it in an audio scene when they're in the same audio together. When one take is called and then the next take is done, getting that cross-cut, ridiculously hard. This bit of the entire episode was the hardest bit to do. I'm really sorry we're a bit behind now.
And we're glad she's dead.
We're close. We're close enough.
Jesus. Too much? Like I said, I'm a bit more open. I don't lie. You don't need to. Not here. It's just us. If we're glad, why do I feel so guilty? Because you feel guilty about everything. That's not your mother. Stress is a proper factor in everything that's happened to John. I brought Jane Prentice to the Institute. The end of the entire world. If I'd done what Peter had asked, if I'd not chickened out and just killed Elias when I had the chance. Really? Really, that's how you're choosing to remember it? Chickening out. I remember it was the wrong choice. You choose to remember it that way, and so the guilt... I get it, alright? But I need it. I choose the guilt because... Because it motivates me to do better. Does it, though? Or does it just keep paralysing us, make us shrink back and wait, hoping things work out? Like with John when we thought the worms had got him. Hey, to be fair, he still kind of hated me back then. I'm really not sure it would have been the best time to take my shot. Fair. He was projecting hard. Between us, that guy's got some real issues. Hey, pretty sure we love that guy. Yeah, and all his many, many problems. Fine. But also, you know that's not what I'm talking about. It's this fantasy that you have that whatever you find at the top of the panopticon is just going to solve everything. I don't. You do, though. You daydream about it. The big climactic showdown with Elias, and then the two of you kiss and push a button that just magically saves the world and makes everything better. It's actually not a button, so stop.
How much more does that hit? How much more does that hit now that you know how it ends? Thankfully, at that point, I didn't know how Magnus was going to end. It wasn't until a few months after. But, oof. God, that's just like, vroom. They did kiss. I added the kiss. They kissed. Everyone says this a lot about the Magnus Archives, everyone who's worked in the Magnus Archives, in that people ask us all the time, like, are you happy that it's over? Like, are you upset that you don't get to work in it anymore? And honestly, I've always said this a lot, that because when something ends, it makes it much more important and much more impactful. The other side of that is everyone across the board put so much into the Magnus Archives. Like everything. It speaks volumes that most podcasts couldn't record during this pandemic, and yet the Magnus Archives kept on carrying through. And it's mainly because of Alex being really good at logistics. He got on the microphones, he sent the microphones to people. I cannot put into words how hard emotionally, mentally, and physically it has been. But because we all cared so much about the Magnus Archives, and because we had the Discord, and because we had so many people to join this with, we knew how important it was. And believe me when I say when it got to 200, that's when I almost collapsed out of exhaustion by the end of it. But this said, the person who I can never get tired of editing is probably Martin. It really hurts that I don't get to edit Martin anymore. Is my bag here? No. I got one of the Magnus pins. I got Lonely because of Martin. Martin is the most unique character to me, and I will never get tired of editing him because there's so much personality to him. There's so much everything to him. And to me, the Magnus Archives is as much about Martin as it is about John and about the fears. To me, Martin is the embodiment of what happens when you just get caught up with this entire world changing, and you're still slammed with not only being caught up in that world, but you have to look after your boyfriend. You have to be the person who tries to figure out what the heck to do. Martin does carry so much weight and stumbles through it, but does it. I don't think I'll ever find a character just like Martin again. To me, people say this so many times, that there's so many similarities between The Lord of the Rings, Frodo and Sam, and John and Martin. And I do kind of see Sam the same way I see Martin, in that they're not the best equipped for the job, but my God, are they just going to power their way through it? Yeah. 186 was the first time I felt really involved in the show. And the 186 is the first time that I'm so bloody proud of this episode. But it really was. This is one of the first episodes where I literally gave everything to. 177 was really hard. 177 was really, really hard. 186 was brutal. But my God, is it so worth the payout to say I got to be part of this show, but I got to be part of this episode. I'll resume it. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
So what? Okay, we should just give up? Just stay here and curl up into a ball and just accept the world as it is? That's your big solution? I'm saying there aren't any easy solutions. We have no idea what's going to happen. Even if we make it to the tower, we don't know there'll be a fix. And if by some miracle there is, we both know the price will be awful. Just look at Melanie.
Thank you.
We are completely out of our depth. We're responsible for everyone everywhere, and we have no idea what we're doing. The last thing we need is self-indulgent guilt on top of that. I'm going to be a real manipulative prick. You know that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Tea.
There's a tiny bit of music in the background. It's like a drone in the background. Tea, please.
So, this price. What do you think? Are we going to have to kill John? I don't know, because you don't know. But it seems like something we should at least consider. I have thought about it, and I won't. I don't think I could. But anything else? Any other price? I'll pay it. Even dying. Yeah. John's as bad as we are. He wouldn't let it happen. It's not his decision. Fine. So flip that round then. What are you going to do when he tries to sacrifice himself because you know he's going to try? I don't know, alright? I don't know. And that's okay for now, but I just want us to have thought about this stuff properly before it comes up. Because even if that's not it, chances are it'll be something else you don't want to do, and we need to make a proper choice. We can't just react out of shame or fear or whatever. What, like with Peter and Elias? Yes. That was a proper choice? I chose wrong, but you made a decision. Your own decision, regardless of the outcome. I'll think about it. We'll think about it. Sure. What about the people here? What people? I don't know. Like, prisoners, I guess?
There's a lot of foreshadowing.
What about them? Why haven't we talked about them? Because you didn't want to think about them. So, we didn't. Yeah? Well, I want to now. Consider it a proper choice, if you like. Okay. Can I see them? No. This place is about hidden, unnoticed suffering. I can feel them, though. Sure, you're aware of it dimly, a sort of far-off lonely terror, but there's no way for us to actually see or hear them. But if this is my domain, can I fix that? Like, can I change things? If you wanted to start actively tormenting them, I'm sure this place would oblige. But fixing things? Making it easier on them or freeing them? Probably not. Fine. Can you tell me about them? I can. Deep down we do know what's happening to them. Do we know who they are? We never met them in the old world, although one of them is named Tim. Just a coincidence, I think. Unless it was a subconscious thing on our part. Tell me, please. Like John would. Why? Just so you can torture yourself? I want to know the exact limits of my guilt. Fair enough. I can't tell you their names, because we don't know them. Who they are, who they were, these details are lost to us. But they're also lost to them. Sometimes they get flashes, moments of people they might have been. Phantom pasts, the ghosts of happy futures.
Thank you.
But they're empty, and vanish if they try to hold them. One of them is young, though he has always felt old. He has always felt tired. He has stood apart from everyone who ever cared for him and never felt the distance. His family were cold, and so, to keep that coldness at bay, he built a towering wall between them and him. He hid it in jokes and practiced smiles, but on a cloudy day they could see it. And when he was able to leave his family behind, that wall came with him, following him, keeping out the world. He would walk the streets of the city at night and wish the world away so it could be just him, with no one to know him or judge him or hurt him. Sometimes, when the emptiness inside began to bite, he reached out for people and took a friend or a lover. But when he did, it was only to watch them beat themselves again and again against that wall until they finally relented and he was alone once more. He told himself it was for the best. He told himself he liked it like that. And now he is here. The wall still surrounds him, though now it encircles all the fields where he staggers, wet from the rain and cold from the wind. He calls out for somebody to see him, for somebody to know how achingly hollow he is. He walks and walks and walks, desperate for another voice, for someone to know where he is and what he's going through. But he can't shout too loud. If he does, he feels the thick, grey mulch rising from where it has settled in the hollow of his chest. It pushes up his throat and streams from his mouth instead of words. It is clouded and so bitterly cold that where it lands the scrubland grass turns brittle and crumbles away, leaving only ice, pulled from the deepest parts of him, hardened and crusted into a smooth, dark mirror, reflecting his lined and careworn face against the clouded sky.
I always find it funny because the statements are by far the longest parts of the episodes, but they're the easiest bits to do. They take very minimal time. It's when it's only one person in the scene, you can edit it like no man's business. Once you start adding other people into it, and once they have to act off each other, that's when it gets quite hard.
Kept them so far from who he is that there is no one now to see his suffering. No one who cares. He falls to his knees, icy mud clinging to his legs, soaking through his threadbare trousers as tears and rain fall from his cheeks in equal measure. Next to him, a woman lies on her side, curled tight around herself, head tucked to her chest. He does not see her, cannot hear her racking sobs so close to his.
Thank you.
She could reach out her hand, touch his arm, his face, his heart, and would feel nothing. Neither would ever know. because at their core they are alone, and nothing can release them from that absolute knowledge. She stands, legs shaking from the cold and from the effort, her muscles locked in place and joints protesting at the shift. How long has she been lying there? How long have the fingers of despair locked around her throat? She doesn't know, and she feels in her bones that no one else does either. Nobody knows she's here, and she misses them all. She tries to picture her friends, a warm and smiling procession of faces, a technicolor memory that only makes the iron grey sky that much duller, the misty drizzle that much colder on her face. What is she recalling? There was music once, lights, laughter, a birthday maybe, or a pub lunch? They sat around on old chairs, comfortable chairs in the warm. The taste of wine was on her tongue and her mouth was curled into a smile. The carefree chatter of her friends surrounded her and soothed her. Or did it? She wasn't talking, wasn't engaged with any of the bright and happy people. Her smile was fixed and deliberate, and it didn't quite match her eyes. She was among this joy, yes, these sparkling friends, but she was not a part of it. Not really. She tried to be, wanted so desperately to be a part of that easy warmth, and maybe they thought she was. But they hadn't known her, not really. They hadn't seen the empty ice that filled her, that kept her apart from them, that she desperately tried to thaw with each and every friendly face that smiled at her. The memory fades, and she shivers as her mind returns to the rain and the wind, tinged with the sting of salt and the slight stench of rotten seaweed, though there was never an ocean here. She feels the ice within her still, and knows she never found anyone to melt it, and now she never will. Those who tried she gripped so tightly that they couldn't breathe, and so she lost them anyway. Now nobody remembers her name. If they should stumble upon an old photograph, some half-remembered birthday party that still brings up a smile, and then see her face, sat there amongst the revellers, they will frown, just for a moment, as they try to remember her name. Then they will shrug, and forget they were even curious. They will not think to wonder about her. And it is this that she is so deeply afraid of. Not the ache of her flesh from the bitter cold, not the cloying dampness of the rain, or the crushing fatigue from uncounted days, or weeks, or years without sleep. It is the sure knowledge that nobody remembers her existence enough to even wonder idly where she might be, or ponder at her suffering. She screams her fear to the open air, but none beside her hear it.
Oh, that long
Thank
delay.
you. I'm sorry. I know it's hard. Yeah. So, what are we thinking? I'm thinking that I didn't ask for this. It's not my fault they're here. True.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't keep existing like this at their expense. It's not right. Whatever happens with Elias, with the rest of the world, I can't live on the misery of others. They'll suffer either way. I get it, okay? I can't decide what happens to them, but I just might be able to decide what happens to me. And if it comes down to it, I'll get John to destroy me like the others. You don't really believe he'd do it. I don't know. Maybe? This took a dark turn. Yeah, but this time it doesn't feel like despair. It feels like resolve. Well,
that line there, it doesn't feel like despair, it feels like resolve. The turning point of Martin. Martin just goes from what the hell, what the fuck is going on to, oh, swear, sorry, PG-13, sorry about to swear, to this just has to happen this way. Martin, just in this episode, in that moment, just
Hopefully
so
it won't
good.
come to that. Hopefully.
And yeah, it does hit harder once you know what happens. Thanks for the tea.
Thanks for the tea. You're welcome. So,
Martin.
how do I leave? I think we just keep walking. And John? I kind of expected him to have interrupted already. I'm sure he'll find us eventually.
Wow, wow, wow. Blah, 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 blah. The Magnus Archives is
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution
But yeah,
Non-Commercial Share Alike 4.0.
it's such an important episode. The thing that I love about the Magnus Archives, Lorianne, the thing that I like about the Magnus Archives is that you notice how some episodes hit some people one week and then hits them less the next week and vice versa. You really realise just how different everyone's fears are. And it's so eye-opening. It's really eye-opening. It's one of the reasons why I like working on this archive so much, is that you get to realise not only people's fears, but why they have those fears. Because it's not just like, oh, I don't like spiders. It's like, I don't like spiders because of this very specific memory of the spiders. Very important. Okay, I'm going to go to big screen just for a moment. We now have a choice. If one of my mods can be amazing and do the poll, I'm going to give you the option of 2 episodes. We can either listen to 199 or we can listen to episode 200. I'll whack up the poll on whichever one you choose. I'm happy to go with your decision because I got to edit both of them. I was so happy. By the way, ignore me. You're about to see my chest and stuff because I'm about to need to do things. But anyway, I was so happy. Oh, you can see that now. Enjoy that. I was so happy that I got to edit them. I'll go back on here. For like, I did a sneaky thing. Ages and ages and ages ago, I asked our producer, Lowry, where is it? Where's 200? There it is. I asked Lowry if I could get episode 200, if I could edit episode 200, and you can't promise that because of production timelines and stresses and whatnot. You don't know who's going to get what episodes. So I just went, okay, for that reason, I'm just going to work really, really, really hard and get my edits done on time, if not earlier, so that will raise the chances. And I was expecting to get either one or the other. The fact that I somehow was privileged enough to get both, I was so giddy for days. I was so giddy. Until I read the scripts and then found out what happens, and then oh boy was I sad. But yeah, it was... I am so beyond happy that I got to be a part of... Oh, not the Biscuit Factory. Where have you gone? That 200, not me other 200. Thank you. I was giddy. The poll should be just above the chat. But yeah, whilst we're deciding, oh, hang on, yeah. Okay, I've just got to keep you in then. That's okay, I can keep you in. It was really hard editing 199 when you know what happens in episode 200. Critical behind this is a Biscuit Factory went. I can play a bit more of the Biscuit Factory depending on time. What's winning? Oh, of course 200's winning. Of course 200 is winning. Okay, we're going to be... I can't do closed captions because it's not on YouTube yet. Because we're only up to, I think, 193 on YouTube. So you're just going to get that screen. It's the best we get. Legends of Pizza, will we ever get an AMA with editors? I don't know. It's not my decision. You can certainly suggest it, but I don't know. It's beyond my hands. You get me. You get me chatting nonsense to you for 3 hours. But yeah, before we go into 200, I just want to share this little tidbit from 199. I got the scripts for 200 and 199 at the same time, and I read them and found out what was going to happen, and that's quite hard in itself. What made it quite hard is not only was I getting people who were dying, but I was also getting a lot of characters' last lines of the show. So I kind of knew when I started editing 200s, I was going to get all the actors saying goodbye to me. So it's like Ben saying goodbye because Elias dies, and, you know, John and Martin, and Melanie and Georgie and Basira, and then Rosie as well. Just hearing all the voice actors say goodbye to their characters on the recording, or to me, and saying thank you so much for your work editor, was quite hard. I was expecting something like that. What I wasn't expecting was for Jonathan Sims, for his last scene that he records to be in 199. Oh, it hit me so hard. I got the audio files to 199, and I picked. Here's a tidbit for you: the scene with John and Georgie, where they're smoking outside, and Georgie's like, "Can I take your lighter?" That's Jonathan Sims' last scene he recorded, and that's the first scene I've recorded out of the two. The first scene I edited out the two last episodes. So I was like, okay, I don't need to say goodbye to me. And then I opened up the file, and it's just John saying, well, this is the last recording I'm going to do. And what he said, his words were, this may be the last recording I ever do, unless you, editor, want me to do any pickups. And I just bawled it. I just cried my eyes out. And I worked extremely hard, probably a lot harder than I should have done, to make sure that Johnny didn't have to record again, because I felt it was very, very, very important that he had his goodbye and that he's not getting dragged up. And yeah, I was just like, I can't remember when, but it was the last stretch, because, you know, it's 199. And just editing these last two episodes with these characters going through the conversations they do and the outcome that comes through, but then also all the voice actors saying goodbye at the same time. Like, everyone, it's not like in season 3 or season 4, like Tim dies, so Mike says goodbye. But like, and you know, there's not a huge cluster of people saying goodbye at once. And in 199 and 200, you've just got everyone just saying it. It was hard, and that's when it hit me that, oh my god, this is gonna end. And I'll chat about 200 as we listen to it, but I'll play it up now. But just to say again, there's no subtitles because I can't get the script up because it's not on YouTube yet. So this would just be just the audio.
Hi everyone, Alex here with a couple of words ahead of this, the final episode of the Magnus Archives.
Oh, he's gonna say
Firstly, we wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who helped us get here. All the cast, crew, volunteers, fans and friends we've had working with us over the years. Making something on this scale is only ever possible when a huge number of dedicated people work together, and we never could have made it all the way to episode 200 without everyone involved. So thank you. Secondly, we wanted to thank you, the listener. If you're hearing this, then you have probably listened to a lot of the Magnus Archives. It has been an honour coming on this journey with you, and we hope you'll stick around and join us on other shows across the RQ network. Thirdly, you may be wondering what happens with Magnus now. Well, no need to panic. We still have a whole roster of post-season content to come out via our normal release schedule, along with additional Patreon content and other things besides. Not only that, but from 5 PM GMT Thursday 25th of March, that's pretty much right now if you're listening to this at release, we are going to be streaming a little digital shindig as some cast and crew drop by to celebrate the end of the show. So be sure to check that out at twitch.tv/rusty_quill. That's all for now. Thank you so much from everyone at Rusty Quill, and we hope you enjoy the final instalment of the Magnus Archives.
So the thing about the production wrapping up is that one by one, the production crew are like, okay, I've handed in my last edit, that's me done. So Annie was the first one, and Annie says, oh, I've finished, because Annie's last episode was 198. So she said goodbye first, and then, and then I got to do it next. And knowing that you're no longer going to have to edit, and that you're no longer editing another episode, that hits quite hard.
Episode 200. Last words.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be okay. Don't worry. I've said my goodbyes to the show. It's memories is what it is. I'll be okay, I promise.
And whispers deep within her mind those bitter thoughts that make her hate herself.
Jonah Magnus.
Sure, cannot hide their secret loathing and leak and spread.
Ceaseless watcher. You know why I am here. Release him.
Shumpo.
Jonah Magnus.
John? Is that you? I was having the most wonderful dream.
Get up.
What's going on? Where? Oh, I see.
It's over.
Is it? Yes. Yes, I suppose it must be. Where's Martin? I rather thought he'd be the one to do the deed. I see. Going it alone, are we? Probably for the best. Empathy only holds you back in the end.
You failed.
Have I?
Immortality. It's impossible. Even without me, nothing escapes entropy. Not forever. Not even fear.
Yes. Pity. I suppose I always knew that, deep down. But it was wonderful while it lasted. I've seen more than I could have lived in 1,000 lifetimes, and every moment was
Shut up! It ends now. All of it. I am going to take this world that you used me to create, and I am going to burn it out. It's the only way. I'm going to leave it a barren, lifeless void, cold and unafraid, and then finally, when everyone's gone and I am all that's left, I will have the satisfaction of knowing that I'll be leaving these things that you serve trapped and starving in their own private hell.
That we serve.
Not for much longer. I wonder if they're even capable of fearing their own ends. I look forward to finding out.
Look, John, as fun as all this melodrama is, enough is enough. We both know that you don't have it in you.
That was for Sasha.
John, wait.
For Tim.
Please, John.
Gertrude. And all the others.
Please, John. I don't want to die.
Neither did they. But no one escapes at the end.
Good luck.
Just pause it there. I got to hear Elias die again and again and again and again and again. It was beautiful. I take so much joy in doing the editing deaths. I got Jared, I got Daisy, I got Elias, I got Sherlock deaths of John and Martin. That was so satisfying because they were so good. Like, Ben is so good at dying. It was so much fun.
The flames keep burning, retching on the smog. Hide. It is not real, but still it comes falling through the pitch black dark.
Mr. Magnus, sir, is everything all right? I thought I heard that...
Rosie, you may go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sims, but I was...
You are dismissed.
Right. Yes, of course. Sir. Thank you.
So this scene just feels like very ongoing, like it feels like everyone's in, but it wasn't. We separated it all so that you could record it. So you had John and Ben, and then you had John and Hannah, and then John and Alex. And it was very much like, okay, that scene's done. Ben says goodbye forever, no more Elias. And then next scene, okay, Rosie's done. Rosie says goodbye forever. Then the next scene, John and Martin are done. John and Martin say goodbye forever, and again and again and again and again and again.
Once upon a time, there was fear.
Oh,
old fear.
Yeah.
Primal fear.
The soundscape in this.
Fear of blood and pounding feet. A fear of that sudden burst of pain, and then nothing. And that fear was nothing. Went nowhere. Knew not what it was. Then it became. Or perhaps it always was and simply entered. But fear was here, and true, and was itself, and it hungered. It wished to know more. It wished to feel more. It wished to be more. And to those things that hurried through the grass, that shivered through the night in their burrows and their caves because they knew the dark held flashing talons and shining eyes, they fed the fear. It was blunt and it was simple, but still it was solid enough to satisfy. And the thing that was fear was sated and content. Then came minds that knew it differently. They grew slowly, over the millennia. Inch by inch they found new things to dread. The fear of their own end, of the things that lived in the darkness, became a fear of the darkness itself. And as they grew to know what it is that they saw, to give it names and struggle at learning, so too did they learn to fear that their eyes might deceive them, or show them too much. And as they learned to know their friends and kin, so too did they learn to fear the unknown figure, the coming of the stranger, and the silence when they were alone. And when they found fire, that bright ignition of home and hope and progress, the thing that was fear gorged itself on a newfound terror once again. And as these tiny, strange minds grew and learned, they did something new. They began to take their thoughts, their instincts and their horrors, and they crystallized them.
All soundscape is Elizabeth. Every little distortion is Elizabeth. Elizabeth is the best soundscape you ever come across.
To crack and fracture along 1,000 unseen fault lines. It bled and warped and multiplied and could no longer see itself as once it did. could never be whole again. But within these forms were freedoms, new and wonderful dreads to push and explore, new muscles to flex. The joy of oozing, crawling pestilence as minds distrusted their own corrupted bodies. The satisfaction of surrounding them, suffocating them, reaching down into them and drinking in their panic as breath failed them. And as they grew to learn their place within the world, the pathetic meagerness of their own existence, they could not spin a story rich or grand enough to fully hide their own awful insignificance, lost and alone in the terrible greatness of the universe. And by the time these minds had reached a point of intricacy to lie and scheme and puppet one another, they had also learned to conceive of war. And as the things that were fear hovered at the edge of the world, the flowing horror of these minds nourished them, swelling some and withering others, pushing and pulling the shattered, swirling mass of terror into ever newer and undiscovered forms. And something else began to happen. Some minds did not simply recoil from them and feed them. Some seemed almost to call them, to court them, to hunger for them in return. Minds that saw the faces of the things that were fear and were compelled, as much as they were repulsed. Whether or not they knew what it was they did, they called out, and they were answered. Time is different for fear, and it cannot be said exactly who was the first to open themselves and be filled with the power of terror. A hermit, huddled in a pitch-black cave through winter, who emerged and brought the depth of night with him wherever he trod. A pestilent chieftain, who found her breath sloughed from her body and rotted whatever it touched. A warrior, driven from their village, who found their face as smooth and shifting as the sands of their home. Which came first does not matter. The unseen gap was bridged, and the thin veil between the world that was and the things that were fear had been torn, ever so slightly. And with this tear they grew stronger, bolder, pouring themselves into the world and creating monsters. Long things that wore you like a suit, smiling things that stripped you from your bones, unseen things that watched and watched and watched and never left you. And with each new creation, each new servant, the fears reached further and fed the things that made them. And with this newfound power came greed, the hunger for more, the unformed, unfocused, but impossibly huge desire to exist, to join the minds that gave them shape and purpose and finally drink their fill till they were one and the same. They had no concept of how, or when, or even why, but they needed it. They needed it. And so the things that were fear began to sing, to draw ever more multitudes to them, to shape them and push them and beg them for freedom, for existence. But though they jostled and pushed and fought to emerge, they could not. For they could not conceive of what or where they were beyond the words and images the minds below could give them. But there was one, the part that some would call the spider, that had been given a gift beyond all its brethren. The minds that feared grew suspicious of their own schemes, of connections and consequences, and over time these suspicions became threads, then webs, then nerves that granted the spider, the mother of puppets, the hidden machination, a mind of its own, to plot and plan and draw its own connections, its own conclusions. Wheels within wheels within wheels. It would not, could not tell its other parts, for were they even able to understand such things which they could not? To trust, to to share in such a way ran counter to its very essence. And so it drew its plan to escape not only this ephemeral cage of non-existence, but even the very reality into which they might break. And it chose its fool, the great I, the most unwise of all the fragments, forever seeking and consuming knowledge that it could not comprehend. It played and twisted, and through the eye brought about a new world, a wide and unending vista of terror and agony, and the place from which it might spread, and spin another web far grander than anything conceived of in the minds that birthed it. Finally, it would find its escape, and with it, apotheosis.
Apotheosis?
No, it won't. It has only found its end.
Just pausing it there, because that's the last statement I've edited. That was the last statement of the show, but that's the last time I edited Johnny by himself. That was really hard. I think that's probably the hardest moment when I realised I'm no longer going to edit another statement. That one hit quite hard. Next thing coming up, we all know what's about to come up. Everyone across the board put everything so much into this scene, and I feel like I cannot stress enough just how much Alex and Johnny put into it. They left nothing on the table, like literally nothing. They gave me, there was so much audio of them trying every single different way, and it was to the point where that if they didn't nail it in that moment, I don't think we could have got it back again, because they went through the mental preparation of knowing your character's about to die, but knowing it's the most important part of the show. Oh, I'll give you beeps. I'll give you beeps. Like everything, the way Alex is like doing like the sobs and the sighs and that hit me so hard. But just like my favorite bit of the entire thing is when Martin swears. When Martin says bastards, he does a voice crack. The kiss I'm really proud of, but that voice crack of the bastards, Alex says it's once, and I spliced it into that take. That bastard comes from another take. It just, everything hit so well, and the soundscape behind it, and just for the past year I've put everything into this show. I think it kind of like all came to a head in this next scene coming up. I would find it very hard to replicate something like this again, because it's just, I know I'm biased because I work on the show, but this ending, this scene, the way they did it, it's just, it deserves all the praise, and everyone across the board, particularly Alex for the way he makes he acts Martin in this, but just, yeah, I just wanted to say it. Here we go.
John?
Martin, what are you doing here?
Oh, thank God. Just stop what you're about to do, okay? I know that you think that... Hey.
We love you.
What's that?
Elias. Jonah Magnus.
You didn't.
I'm sorry, Martin.
You didn't. No. This is... You can't.
I did. I am.
Why?
You know why. I can't let them out. I can't. Not again.
What have you done, John?
Go tell the others. It's over.
No, you don't understand.
What?
I'm sorry, John. I'm so sorry. I saw you had gone, and I knew that you couldn't help yourself. You never could. I knew you'd lied to me, that you were going in alone.
Martin, What did you do?
I told them to go early. To do it straight away and I'd keep you talking until they were done.
Oh, Martin.
I didn't think you'd go through with it, not without me. I can't believe you'd do this, that you'd leave me like this. You swore to me. You swore to me, you bastard.
Martin, I'm still here.
Are you? How much of you is even left now?
It's still me, Martin. I'm still here.
How would you even know?
I'm sorry, Martin, I am, but it's done. You can hate me, you can scream at me, but it won't change anything. I had to do this, and you promised.
Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare.
I'm sorry. We can still be together, here, until it's over.
You're not listening. You never listen. They are down there buying those things and lighting it right now.
It's fine, Martin. I'll call off the servitors. They can't light it if they don't have... If they don't... Wait up. Oh. No.
John!
Martin,
John, we have to get out of here.
I can't. Martin, I'm Charles Quill's place.
God damn it, John!
I can withstand it. I just don't.
Oh, come on, John! Come on!
No. I can feel the pull, the web, the tapes it wants. No. I won't let it.
For God's sake, John, move!
I can't. Martin, get out of here. What's going to be left of me after this? You can't see that.
No!
I can't protect you from this. Go!
I'm not leaving you trapped here, killing the world while I watch.
If you stay, you'll die.
Then I'll die.
No! Martin, please. I can't lose you. Not like this.
Tom. Okay. Where you go, I go.
That's the deal. Okay.
What?
Do it. The knight's just there. Let them go.
I'm not going to kill you.
Cut the tether. Send them away. Maybe we both die. Probably. But maybe not. Maybe everything works out. And we end up somewhere else.
Together?
One way or another. Together.
I don't think I can.
It has to be you. The eye won't let me do it.
Are you sure about this?
No. But I love you.
I love you too.
Goodbye, John. Goodbye, Alex. Not editing John and Martin anymore. They're all gone. There's only 3 characters left.
Huh.
Actually, before I play the scene, also thank you for the memes of people in the Archie streams chat. I can see you in the Discord. There's not many lines in this last scene. I spent way longer on it than I probably should have done. There's a thing with Peter Jackson when he was directing The Lord of the Rings. The final scene he was editing with Elijah Wood, who plays Frodo. He kept on saying another take, do it again, and he didn't need to. The first take was perfect. The first take was fine. Peter Jackson couldn't let go. He found it really, really hard to let go of Elijah Wood and The Lord of the Rings, and it's just again and again and again. that clip and the extras I played throughout the entire season 5 of the Magnus Archives. I did it here. The last line that Basira says, I edited again and again and again and again, and there's only so many ways you can say good luck. And Frank did it perfectly, the same one, but I couldn't let go. And I think I spent about 3 hours just going through it, changing it slightly, nudging it slightly from sooner to later to sooner to later to louder to quieter to changing the take. And just, they got a point. I made a cup of tea because I'm Yorkshire. Went and made a cup of tea, I came back up and I listened to it and I was like, that's it, let go. Just let go. And I played it the last time, I uploaded it and just went, that's it. There's nothing more to do. I'm done. And that instant, like, oh, that the Magnus is done. That's me done. There's no more. Yeah.
Still works.
You found something?
Just one of the old tape recorders.
God, tough little bastards, aren't they?
Yep.
No luck?
No, still no sign of them.
No bodies, though. It's a good sign, maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe it's time to accept that they're gone. And honestly, it's probably for the best. I mean, I just don't think people would exactly be understanding. You remember what happened when they found Simon Fairchild?
Yeah.
And he's not just some powerless left-behind avatar. You know, we're talking about the archivist.
Yeah, okay, you've made your point. It would just be nice to know for sure.
All we can do is hope.
Suppose.
We should go. It'll be dark soon and we still need batteries for the night lights.
And I'm sure Rosie's keen for us to take the Admiral back off her hands.
She's alright. He's calmed down a lot.
Thank God for tin tuna. Come on.
What do you want me to do with this?
Leave it. We're done with tapes.
Want me to smash it?
I think we can probably just turn it off.
Okay.
If anyone's listening, goodbye. I'm sorry, and good luck.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. Today's episode was written by Jonathan Sims, produced by Lorianne Davis, and directed by Alexander J. Newell. It featured Jonathan Sims as the Archivist, Ben Meredith as Jonah Magnus, Hannah Brankin as Rosie, Alexander J. Newell as Martin Blackwood, Frank Voss as Basira Hussain, Lydia Nicholas as Melanie King, and Sasha Sienna as Georgie Barker. To subscribe, buy merchandise, or join our Patreon, visit rustyquill.com. Rate and review us online, tweet us at The Rusty Quill, visit us on Facebook or email us via mail at rustyquill.com. Join our community on the Discord via the website or on Reddit at r/the Magnus Archives. Thanks for listening.
Hi everyone.
And then Alex says another. I find a higher one to the patrons. I'll go to big screen. And I put in some chill music because we deserve something chill. And that was the Magnus Archives. Yeah. I definitely said my goodbye once I handed in that thing. So listen it back. It's more like a memory lane. Even though it was only about a month and a half ago. It feels like a lifetime ago since working on it. And when you're working on it and you know the end is coming, you kept on thinking, what's going to happen after the show ends? What am I going to be doing with myself? What am I going to do? And as I started having these thoughts, I want to share this. I'm going to get quite sensitive for a moment, quite emotional for a moment, because I started having these thoughts around December about what I'm going to be doing once Magnus Archives ends. Like, I'm still going to be, I'm sure I was still going to be part of Rusty Chrome one. I wasn't going to change that, but like, is this it? Is this what it is? And I'm going to get emotional about Mike, because when I was having these thoughts in December, I did a stream and Mike gave me a meeting afterwards. And Mike always does this. Mike does a sort of feedback meetings to kind of talk about how your streams have gone. And Mike basically said Anno's going to be stepping down. And he basically said, would you like to take over from Anno? And I got to start with, oh God. And I got to start doing more stuff for the community, which I really, really wanted to do. And I got to start stuff with my We Talk a Dream stuff, which is my composer handout. So I started Discord then. And what should have been like, okay, the last 2 hour Magnus Archives has ended, has turned into the Magnus Archives has ended and you get to just launch off from it. And I'm forever grateful for the Magnus Archives, and Magnus Archives changed so much. But doing this community stuff, being part of the community like this, being part of RQ streams, and getting to talk to people and getting to connect to people like this, it means the Magnus Archives is a part of what I am, but it means I've become so much more through this. And I just want to say how really grateful I am I get to do this, and how immensely thankful I am to the whole of Rusty Quill, but especially Mike and especially Anno. Anno let me be myself in the Discord long before I started streaming, and I've made so many friends, and I've done so much since I started streaming, and it's just been, it's the best. It's the absolute best. There's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it.
We're so grateful for everything you do for us and love having you around. Thank you for being Unico 3.
Thank you so much, Fume, about them. And basically what I was saying is that the Magnus Archives has just been the beginning of...
Lots of hugs from chat.
Thank you
love
so
and
much.
Appreciate you so much. Rust-type beeps.
It's been the start of everything. And there's so much I'm going to be doing this year. And I get to share it all with all of you. And it's just... There's so many moments, I say this a lot, there's so many times where it's the end of Pursuit of Happiness, where you see Will Smith sort of clap to himself at the end out of happiness. I've had that many, many a times, but this year, being a streamer and getting to play my music and getting to chat to the community every week, this feels like I've made it. It feels, if I can do this forever, there's no higher. There's lots of things I could get, like maybe I could buy a house someday if I'm very lucky, and it's lots of little material things, and you know, maybe I can help more people, but emotionally speaking, there's nothing better than this. So believe me when I say you guys have given me everything, like really, really everything, and I can't ever repay just how much.
Nico, you're a gift 3.
Thank you. I cannot express how much you guys have changed my life, and I hope it continues forever, and I just hope I get to do this forever, because it's just been life-changing. Yeah, a huge thank you to the mods. I forgot to thank my mods on Wednesday and I feel guilty, but the mods are incredible. Thank you, every mod, from the Disco mods to the Archie Streams mods to my own mods. You do amazing stuff. Next on RQ Streams, you got a double dose of Mike this week. Mike returns tomorrow at 5 p.m. Playing Alien Isolation. And then I'm back in the Wednesday session. And then Mike is on the Saturday session again. But until then, I usually play my music, and I'm just going to play the Biscuit Factory again as a nice little happy outro.
Get yourself a brew, lad.
I'll get myself a brew. Thank you, non-binary star system. And yeah, thank you all so much. I'll stop the chill music. We'll whack on Biscuit Factory, and I'll see myself out. So where's the thing? Where's Biscuit Factory? There you are. Yeah. Take care, everyone. I'll leave you with this in the end screen.
We appreciate you so much. You're so important.
Thank you, Concerned Hobbit. Thank you, Evan, so very much.
Rusty Quill presents the Magnus Archives.
Oh, heck, it's happening. Here back home, it's happening.
Episodes 200. The Biscuit Factory.
Lads.
This is Johnny Uruwani, head Uru at the Magnus Institute. This is my story, my Everest, my biscuit.
Johnny Uruwani? I don't know if I can hold on. It's been so long since I tasted it. That crumbly goodness, that short texture. I'm beginning to forget.
Jiggles, just a little further. I got you. Soon we'll be dunking our hearts out. Our love has got us this far. Just a bit further. It can't be.
For good cows. Hope. It's up. Look, the panopticon. Good cows are back. It's moo all the way down. They're surrounded it.
Jonah, he's been defeated. The fears have lost. No one can defeat the good cows. But how did they get in? The good cow domain was thought to be lost. Martin? You were mooting all along? Then that means you know the way to the Biscuit Factory. They're all here. Hobnobs, custard creams, chocolate bourbons, digestives. I can't believe it. Yes, I won't eat your jammy dodgers, Mutin. My only concern is how we're going to catch them all before they drop on floor. There's 8 conveyor belts, and the baskets are almost full. If only we knew someone with 8 hands. Mr. Spider? He's here. He was good all along. We're saved, Mutin. He's single-handedly catching all the biscuits and gift wrapping them for us. The world's saved. If only he survived. You know who I mean.
But lads, I'm here. I finally finished kayaking. Oh lord.
Timmy Wimmy, you survived. This is a miracle. Life truly makes sense again.
Oh, come on lads. Let's go get a cuppa and wait for this all to blow over. Wink.
This is Johnny Uruwani, head Uru at the Magnus Institute. This was indeed the archives of our Magnus. But listener, what will your Magnus be? What will your archives be? gore and make something spectacular. You gave me everything, and I only want the same for you. You deserve the world. Thank you. Statement ends.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill. It is licensed under a Creative Commons non-attribution share-alike 4.0 international license. Today's episode was written and performed by Neeks and directed by Neeks. It starred Neeks as Johnny Uruwani, Jiggles, and Timmy Wimmy.